2025 meeting of the Fairfield Board of Education. With us tonight, we have Mr. Krasnov, Mrs. Jacobson, Mrs. Flynn, myself, Mr. Peterson, Superintendent Testani, Mrs. Maxon Kennelly, Mr. Asa, Mrs. Guernsey, and Mrs. Rinaldi. If you'll join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Moving on with our agenda, we've decided to give the student reporters a week off. So we'll move on to item 4, public comment. If you have a comment on something that's a matter on tonight's agenda, please come to the table. You'll have up to 3 minutes to speak. Just give your name and address, and specifically mention the item of the agenda you're talking to.
You hear me now? Recognize me? On October 6th, you implemented the phone policy. On November 6th, I conducted a survey.
Excuse me.
Here are the statistics.
The phone policy is not on our agenda tonight.
Just, it's like 10 seconds.
Our practice is not to take public comment except for items on our agenda. If you have something that you want to send to board members, we're certainly welcome to deal with it that way.
I actually did that. I sent a lot of emails and nobody responded. So, look, this talks about anxiety.
Again, this is not an appropriate public comment because we have other business to conduct at this meeting.
Look, this is anxiety, up 82% since the phone policy. I mean, these are surveys done by the students. This one, let's see, where's the depression one? 78% depression rates. So I'll get out of here, but I gotta get my point across. You have created a mental health epidemic upon the students with this policy. Please,
Thank you.
I'm gonna leave the board all right, I'm gonna get out of here.
I invite you to send it to board members. Thank you. Appreciate that. Any other public comment on agenda items before our board tonight?
Hello, Kristen O'Neill, 272 Home Fair Drive. I just wanted to make a quick comment about the school calendar. I'm also the Board of Ed rep for the Jennings PTA. So I had a few parents who were unfortunately not able to be here tonight approach me about possibly adding Diwali to the school calendar. I explained that would likely be a lengthy process, but I just wanted to mention it on the record. I also just wanted to publicly thank Mr. Peterson and Mrs. Guernsey for their service. Us at Jennings we're frequent visitors here at the Board of Ed, and we just want to thank you both for your support through everything. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Good evening, board. Chris Stewart, 289 Davis Road. I'm here actually representing American Legion Post 143 in respect to the calendar issue that you'll be debating tonight. Chairman Peterson reached out to me a couple of weeks ago, and I know there's been there's been many conversations, probably over the last 20 years, about Veterans Day. And what do we do with Veterans Day? Currently, the children have off on Veterans Day. And there's been different commanders of my post, and there's been different veterans that have varying opinions. So I wanted to share with you the most current opinions of my post, which is only one of 2 posts in town. But it was actually surprising. So our last meeting last Monday, I addressed our post, which approximately 30 members in attendance, of all ages, anywhere from 50 to 80, literally. And there was one single majority. The kids should go to school on Veterans Day, which was very, very, very surprising to me, frankly. There were a couple points that there's always stipulations for veterans. There's always something we want to be very clear about. First off, I want to tell you that there was general concurrence that we thought that the Board of Education and the teachers of all the schools could really do a good job in representing Veterans Day. Now, I was sharing with some of the board members before the meeting. I was at North Stratfield School Veterans Day event this week, or last week, and I was at McKinley, and they're both amazing, amazing events. The schools just do amazing, amazing things in regards. Riverfield does a Memorial Day event. It's focused more around Memorial Day for, I forget what they call it, but it's Patriots Day, thank you very much, which has been a wonderful event too. So anyway, the majority of my post did say that kids should go to school. So why should kids go to school on Veterans Day? Well, because we think that it's a better situation for them to come to school and have a dedicated curriculum based on that day. So what we would ask, if this was implemented, was one, that this be dedicated. The 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month is very special. Can't push to the last Friday to make it a long weekend, you know. Now listen, someone even said to me the other day, well, what if it's coming to Saturday? Okay, do it on a Friday. I'm okay with that, right? But the day is sacred, right? Today, or the 11th is a sacred day. So we would like it to stay in that day. We would like to see a dedicated curriculum on that day, at least part of the day, dedicated to veterans. Now, including veterans in the process, this could be veterans from the individual schools. We would certainly be happy to be there as American Legion post. The complication with bringing this to one day is that we can only be so many places, right? So we were at McKinley and North Stratfield, as I mentioned, and that wasn't on Veterans Day, because on Veterans Day, I was in the town green giving the Veterans Day address. So we really hope that the schools like North Stratfield, McKinley will still have an event, maybe call it a concert if we need to, on a different day and invite us, and we still have that interaction. But that day, that sacred day of Veterans Day, should be something that the kids attend school. What else do they want to say? Our limited our ability to support. Oh, and the curriculum. And I know this is way too much time, so it takes. So yeah, in regards to the curriculum, if the board or the administration wants to have any of us look at the curriculum and make recommendations, we'd be happy to do that. If you don't, I totally get it. We don't need to be involved. So that's kind of it. So thank you all for listening.
Thank you very much for coming.
To do it to you and the members of your post, thank you for your service.
Any other members wish to give public comment on items on our agenda?
Lauren Efren, 241 Burr Street. I'm PTA Council President-elect. I just want to say.
And my name is Greg Bosch, 470 Jackman. We're here tonight to honor and celebrate Carol Guernsey and Jeff Peterson for their commitment and service to Fairfield Public Schools and the town of Fairfield. Your leadership, volunteerism, and compassion have strengthened our schools, supported our teachers and staff, and shaped the educational experience of every child in our district. Over the 2 terms you've each served, Fairfield Public Schools has accomplished much. You have overseen major construction projects like the addition to Mill Hill, brought air conditioning to classrooms across the district, invested in turf fields and accessible playgrounds, helped guide us through the uncertainty of a global pandemic, debated and adopted new curricula, and jump-started a new curriculum committee to oversee this important work in the future. Updated the district's long-range facilities plan, stewarded our nationally renowned music program, helped this community face the challenges of redistricting, racial imbalance, utilization with honesty and integrity, and so much more. Most recently, you led Fairfield towards a once-in-a-generation commitment, the rebuilding of Dwight Elementary School, and the creation of our first purpose-built early childhood center attached to an elementary school.
None of this happened by chance. It happened because you have given countless evenings in this boardroom, read every page of backup material, listened to teachers and families, collaborated with your colleagues, and approached each issue with empathy and an eye toward all children, not just your own. That spirit of service, to think beyond one's own neighborhood, one's own school, even one's own point of view, is what makes Fairfield strong. It is what allows a community to value intramural, rugby, and theater in the same breath, to see the importance of world languages right alongside math and science, and to hold space for every child's potential. As you pass the torch to a new generation of board members and parents tonight, we hope that you will share any wisdom you wish to leave behind, your hopes for the future, your lessons learned, and your vision for what Fairfield can continue to become. Your list of accomplishments also plots a course for the future and reminds us that there is important work ahead. As members of the PTA Council, thank you for your commitment to the Fairfield students and your steadfast belief in public education. Fairfield is a better place because of your service.
Wish you both the very best. Thank you, and sincerely, for everything you have done for the children of Fairfield.
Thank you very much. Any other members of the public? Mr. McGarry.
Hello, Mick McGarry, Fairfield Education Association. As you're discussing the calendar, we sent out a very brief and non-scientific survey to our elementary and middle school teachers about the possible calendar changes. The results, well, you're probably hoping that there was a very clear indication of one way or the other, and there is not. Unfortunately, well, they were very thoughtful answers. But it is split. Right now, actually, the option A has taken the lead at 48.9%, and option B, I'm sorry, no, it switched. Option B now has the lead with 51%. So you have the opportunity to disappoint one half of the staff. The second question in this two-question survey was just thoughts and ideas, and there's some general themes. And the themes are essentially about quality and the concerns about quality of instruction, because 3 half days is disruptive to the schedule and learning, and the quality of the conferences themselves. As teachers mentioned that by conference number 22, they'll probably not be as fresh and ready to go as conference number 2 or 3. The other ideas were that another concern was that if parents will not have the opportunity, 3 days gives obviously more time to find a time to meet. And that if the parents were not able to make it, then it would be difficult to schedule either before school, after school, or during prep time, which could also be disruptive to teaching preparation. And there were other comments that you can see, I sent around to everyone, about the calendar in general and the timing of the day, how it would work out logistically, which I guess you could discuss in further detail. The other concern that folks raised, Fairfield does have, we do have the highest percentage of resident teachers in the state. And there were concerns about how teachers would be able to attend their own child's conference during that. So if you choose to go that route, I'd ask that there be a plan for some sort of accommodation that way so that parents would be able to attend their own child's conference. And then the questions about spring conferences as well. So that information should have gone to you in an email just a little while ago. So please consider that. And I would like also to take this time to thank Ms. Guernsey and Mr. Peterson for your service to the town of Fairfield. This can be a thankless job, so thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'll just note that I think board members should see the survey in their emails. Any further public comment? All right, seeing none. Moving on to item 5, recognition of excellence, which I appreciate Megan and you wrote.
Sure. I'd just like to start by thanking both of you. wholeheartedly for your commitment to the town of Fairfield, especially the children of Fairfield. I've worked with a lot of board members in the last 7 years in 2 different districts. I've also been an observer as an employee for 30 years in public education. And I can tell you that it is probably the most thankless elected office that anyone can serve. As you both are probably well aware, not telling you anything you don't know, but it is the most fulfilling. I think as you get a little time away from the position and you reflect back, I think you'll feel good about the work that you've both done to the children here and the legacy that you leave behind. And, you know, they gave a long list of accomplishments. I'm going to add one more. You were both responsible for hiring a great superintendent. So you should both feel very good about that as well. But in all seriousness, I'd like to present both of you with just a small token to remember your time here on the board. Peterson.
And we have photo.
Yep, we're gonna do some kind words. We're gonna take some pictures. Well, you want photo first? Photo, come on.
If I might, I'd like to take a minute to say some words about Carol, to acknowledge her as she concludes her dedicated service to the board. She came onto the board to finish Jen Leeper's term, which was a big enough task, but you know, she came to the table completely prepared, started making a difference from day one. This was also 2020 hit us right after that. And we had a lot of exciting projects that we were looking forward to doing that we didn't get to do. The thing that I was thinking about when I was writing this is that this was the point where we kind of got a sense of what your commitment was going to look like to the board. And I think the key element of your approach has always been a focus on student experience. And you and I haven't agreed on a lot of things, but during COVID, we worked together on, you know, music experience for students was very important. During COVID too, there was the issue of the art minutes, which was something that you never let go of. You finally got those resources restored in this last budget cycle. And during our redistricting debate, there was no more passionate advocate for grandfathering, which again was a kind of critical student experience item. She's also participated in this board's work in a lot of ways that are less obvious to the public. Several years on policy, which is a tough gig, as I know. She was both secretary and vice chair. And just this past year, she spearheaded the curriculum committee, which she has been the chair of. So look, serving on this board is not easy. It requires a lot of hours and deep commitment. Carol has never shied away from the work, and she's just embraced it. On behalf of the board, I thank you. I thank you for us. I thank you for our families, and most of all, for our children.
So at this point, I'd just like to turn it over to Mr. Asa, who is going to say a few words about the gentleman who joined him on the board, our chair, Jeff Peterson.
So thank you. I was asked to prepare something in light of possibly being ahead of somebody else, and I was the late one tonight, so I apologize for that. But just a few words. As Jeff Peterson finishes out a second term tonight, I wanted to share some thoughts on Jeff and his dedication to the board and the district, including staff and students. Jeff and I were running mates twice, and he is completing his 8th year on this board with a list of contributions that goes on and on. A small peek into what Jeff's given the board and the district includes serving on the Holland Hill Building Committee as the board liaison, serving on the less glamorous Standing Building Committee, serving on the Policy Committee, and chairing the Finance Committee for years. Being the board liaison to the administrator's contract not once, twice, but 3 times. Jeff most recently led the board as chairperson, which included serving on the town working group, which had never occurred before, and was part of the broader accomplishment mentioned tonight by others of getting the Dwight project approved. Jeff has served for years as the BOF liaison, attending countless BOF meetings over the years and representing the board at the table, including advocating for the budget year over year. When Jeff became chairperson, he immediately started reaching out to leaders of other town bodies to build relationships and build bridges between our BOE and these bodies. That is important work, and he has received praise from the leaders and those bodies themselves. Jeff has always represented the will of the board, even when on the losing side of a vote. He is a role model of how we work as a group and move forward after these votes. Jeff has never been afraid to have a healthy debate and always composed himself in a professional and diplomatic way. I can honestly say tonight that the king of commas and editing documents at the table will be greatly missed by staff and the district, including kids he fiercely advocated for the last 8 years. We wish you the best, Jeff, in your retirement from the board, and hope this is not the last we hear from you on BOE matters. You're always welcome to come back to the table and offer public comment, but hopefully after a well-deserved break. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And so at this time, we did want to say if anybody else wanted to say a word or two, obviously a little informal here, but if you would like to, you're welcome to do so. Mrs. Flynn?
Thank you very much. I kind of gave a brief overview of this at our last Finance Committee meeting, but I think I'm going to throw it back to before I was a board member, where I had the pleasure of meeting both Mr. Peterson and Ms. Guernsey. I will echo Mr. Ace's thanks, not only as a board member, but as a constituent, as a parent, for the advocacy for our budget year over year. I think the first time I met you was at a brown bag or a Board of Finance meeting, and I was always so impressed, as Mr. Ace said, your commitment to the will of this body, not always your personal vote or belief, and I think it's an incredible example. And Ms. Guernsey, I will shout it over. I think I met you in the Osborne Library at a PTA council meeting that I got coerced into going to by Jessica Gerber because she said it would be another good place to find my time. And I found you running FAY, which if people don't remember, was an organization that used to organize musical performances across our schools. It doesn't exist anymore. And it really was the spearhead and the brain inspiration for what turned into, I believe, our green teams and our digital wellness committees and our collaborated work across our PTAs. So while a lot of our work ends up here at this table, there's so much that happens before, so thank you for that work. It impacts us today, and just personally, I'll just miss you terribly, so thank you for all your work, Carol.
Mrs. Jacobson?
Thank you. I'll start with Mr. Peterson since we came on together. Sorry, lost my voice. Thank you for being my go-to for all things LED and kilowatt. Something I'll leave in those hands. Having me coin the term in our time together serving in policy of what I can say between you and Mrs. Maxon Kennelly, my personal trauma that I will always have thank you both for that. But in all seriousness, thank you very much for your time before being on this board and currently through our 2 terms together that we've shared. And while you and I have agreed and disagreed, what I will say about you from my own personal perspective is that somehow you and I have always been able to come back to laughter every time. And that's something that I am going to carry with me, that even in faces where we might have disagreements, that we were able to laugh with each other and go on. So thank you for that. And thank you for your relationship over the last 8 years, sorry, 8. Girl, gonna miss you very much. And others have already spoken, and I know the other audience members have spoken too. The way that you have carried very small pockets of our students that does not always make it to this table, and their well-being and their passions. That may not be the largest groups or the loudest groups, is something that is incredibly admirable and inspirational. Your multidimensional brain, that is sometimes hard to follow for me in terms of every way that you can see an issue and present alternate paths for us to get towards a place together, is something that I admire. And I just want to say that you have made a profound impact on this district, but also as me, as a board member and as a person. And I will miss you terribly on this board, and will try to carry and do service and justice to the work that I know that you've brought to this table and to our district. So thank you for your time. And I didn't prepare anything, but thank you very much.
Mrs. Rinaldi.
I'll start with Mr. Peterson. I still remember the day that I first met you at Chip's Restaurant, the long flowing red locks. I didn't realize what I was getting into, and you so calmly sat down with me and talked to me about your family and how important your family was to you. And you talked about your wife and your support of your wife. And then you got into the details about the board. And from there on, you were a mentor to me in every step of running and through the last 2 years for me on the board. And I still remember us talking about Adam Smith, the father of modern economics and capitalism, and our love of it. And that's something that we've always been able to come back to when things got rough, even, talking about personal matters with our own kids. We always came back to that. So I had to get you this, and I hope you keep it on your shelf and always remember me. And I truly thank you for everything from day one. Carol, thank you so much for becoming one of my friends on the board. We learned of our commonality of Western New York, Buffalo, which is just really crazy in and of itself. I talked to you about my love of arts education and what it means to family, my father that passed, and my own children. And I look forward to continuing that work. And I feel so incredibly proud.
Mr. Krasnoff.
Mr. Peterson, thank you so much for everything you've done. I know when I first got to this table, we didn't always see eye to eye, especially when I was sitting out there. But I think we grew to have a mutual respect for each other, and come to find we have a lot more commonality in terms of our vision for the students, which I've always appreciated. So thank you. And Ms. Guernsey, thank you for everything you've done, especially in the curriculum committee. I know we had a lot of growing pains learning how to make that committee function properly, and I think we're finally starting to get somewhere, and we really appreciate you and all that you did there and everything else you've done. So thank you. Both of you, I've learned a ton. I think I'm a better board member now because of both of you, and I'm sad to see both of you leave. So thank you.
I know that Mr. Lee would have loved to have echoed many of these points. Very sorry that he couldn't join us this evening. I just want to say that I think it was brilliant that Ms. Brown and Mr. Testani changed this agenda item to recognition of excellence. I think that's exactly what both of these board members have brought in very different ways to this board. And we'd have, as a board, given you a few small gifts there as a token of our appreciation of your service. And I would like to have the perhaps incredibly egotistical thing is to say is that I'd like on the behalf of the town to thank both of you. Stepping up for public service is extremely difficult. It is recruiting all of you out there. It is not hard at all. There are so few meetings, it is a piece of cake. And in that piece of cake, we just want to thank both of you for stepping up, because a town doesn't run, the district does not we bring something to this board work, which is a vital voice for the community. And we thank you so much. So again, on behalf of the town, I'd like to thank you for your service. And I don't know if now's the appropriate moment. I like actually I wrote it down, one of our public commenters talking about a few final words. Might be best to save that for the open board comment because we got plenty of work still to do. But again, just thanking you so much and really appreciating your work. And with that, I turn it back over to Mr. Peterson.
Thank you so much. I have a lot to say. I may save it for open board comment. I don't know if Mrs. Guernsey wants to say anything now or later. All right, we're all excited to get into business. Thank everybody. Thank you very much. But moving on to item 5B, student achievement data presentation.
Good evening, everybody. James Evajancic, Chief Academic Officer, and tonight I'm joined by Patricia Wood, our District Assessment and Data Coordinator, and Janine Goss, our Executive Director of Pre-K-12 Literacy. We've prepared for you our state level and district level data in the following slides. We're each going to take a section, and of course at the end we'll open it up for questions about the data that may still exist. Starting off, we just wanted to give an overview of the district achievement, and specifically for the public's knowledge as well, our 3 through 8 students are mandated to take an English and a math assessment. That's what SBA means throughout this presentation at the end of the year in April and May. Our high school students in 11th grade take the SAT for math and language arts or evidence-based reading and writing, and then 5th, 8th, and 11th graders take a science assessment known as the NGSS. Again, those are federally mandated. They account for our accountability scores each year. With that being said, I do want to start by highlighting our there are 7 schools of distinction this year, but 5 of them that came directly from this data. They are considered high performance, and throughout this presentation, I will show you where the other schools have met growth performance as well. They are Dwight, Jennings, North Stratfield, Osborne, and Riverfield, and that is for an overall number of performance within our district. I will say there's a number of schools that are right at the edge. They're teetering right at the edge of this distinction. Mill Hill was 1 point away from getting it. Sherman was 2 points away, and Burr was 9/10 of a point away. So we're very close with a number of other schools as well, just in terms of how the data bears out with the top 10% there. You'll notice improvements, we'll say, from last year to this year. Some of them seem insignificant, but all of them have either been status quo or gone up in each of our district elements for language arts, math, and science. Just to be clear, before we kick off much of the disaggregated data, this is data that is all at 1 point in time. And as our teachers and our principals know, they should be taken into consideration with other forms of data, specifically classroom informative data that really make a change in a student's life. Nonetheless, they do give us a high-level picture of what the school and district performance is over time. With that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Goss, who will begin by school proficiency.
Just want to add one thing that Justine LaSala, our program director for science, wanted to make sure was highlighted. The 2018-2019 NGSS was a pilot year. The assessment has evolved quite a bit. She wanted us to emphasize that since then. She did say it was quite easy back then compared to the test that our students take now statewide. So just wanted to highlight that. Because you do see a dip from 2018-19 to last year's data. But it is not, as she said, an apples to apples comparison. It is very much an apples to oranges comparison. So just wanted to make sure that is communicated on her behalf.
Thank you for bringing that up. I should mention, we did add that pink column into each of the slides this year. It seems to be a data point that comes up as a question, so you just wanted to put that out there. From the beginning, the students in 18-19 that took the SBA, the third graders are currently in our high school, they're sophomores. So in terms of comparing, just keep that in mind.
Okay, good evening. The first section of slides is going to show proficiency by school for our state assessments on Smarter Balanced, SAT, and Next Generation Science Standards. Want to go to the next? Want me to do it? Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so this chart shows grades 3 through 5 ELA performance on Smarter Balanced and the percentage of students who performed at or above proficiency. And so we see upward trends at 3 schools over the past 3 administrations. If you look, you can see Burr shows a steady increase. Jennings made a significant increase of 14 percentage points if you look from spring of 2022-23 to 24-25, and Stratfield, who grew 6 percentage points during that same time frame. Now, we also see schools that have generally maintained similar proficiency rates prior to the last 3 administrations, Dwight, Mill Hill, North Stratfield, and Osborne Hill. And I also want to point out, if you take a look at Holland Hill is generally trending higher than prior to COVID. And although McKinley's proficiency rates over the past 3 administrations are lower than prior to COVID, they have had a strong start this fall based on our district assessments that Dr. Zavajancic will share with you later in the presentation. So moving on to our secondary schools, Roger Ludlow and Tomlinson showed a 3 to 4% increase over the past 2 administrations on Smarter Balanced. And if you look at the high school, Ludlow shows a steady increase in the grade 11 evidence-based reading and writing, part of the SAT, over the years and has surpassed their pre-COVID proficiency rate with last year's increase at 91%. Okay, now we're switching gears and we're looking at math achievement on Smarter Balanced in grades 3 through 5. And we note here that there are steady increases in proficiency rates over the last 2 administrations at 6 of the 11 schools. And both Sherman and Dwight maintained proficiency scores, at 81% and 88% respectively, with Dwight being the highest scoring elementary school over the last 2 administrations. So math proficiency at our middle schools shows a steady increase across the board over the last 3 years, ranging from 7 to 13 percentage points. And in all 3 instances, all 3 schools have either met or exceeded their pre-COVID proficiency score. The math SAT, however, shows the opposite trend, and there is a steady decline in the grade 11 proficiency scores at both high schools, dating back to the spring of 2019. So now we're looking at the NGSS state exam at the elementary school in grade 5. 6 of the 11 schools have proficiency rates at 80% or higher in the most recent administration. And if we count Dwight at 79%, we have 7 schools. That's quite close. So I want to count Dwight too. The last time there were 6 schools at that proficiency rate was all the way back at 2018-19, and as you know, that was a different test. So this is the harder test. And the other 2 administrations, we only had 3 of the 11 schools at 80% or higher. So that is a significant increase. Now, there are a few schools to highlight here: Burr, Mill Hill, and Riverfield, demonstrated a 7% increase last year from 2023 to 2024. And Dwight showed a 10% increase, as did Jennings. And if you look there, Jennings scored the highest at 93%. Sherman had a 6% increase as well. Lots to celebrate there. When we move to the secondary schools, grade 8 and grade 11 also take NGSS. And generally speaking, we do see some modest increases over the last 3 years. And when comparing spring of 2023 and last spring of 2025, there's an 8% increase at Fairfield Woods Middle School and Roger Ludlow Middle School. And then when I move over to the high school rows, there was a 7% increase at Ludlow High School if I compare 2022-23 to last year's scores as well. So I'm looking more at the 3 administrations and looking more long-term, trying to find my celebrations here. I do see some smaller increases over the 3-year period, and those are at Tomlinson and Ward, but they were increases nonetheless. Okay, so now I'm going to move to the next section, and this one breaks down proficiency on those same assessments, but now we're going to look at them by grade instead of by school. So on Smarter Balance in grades 3 through 11, grade 5, if you look prior to COVID, grade 5 had the highest proficiency score, followed by grade 8. And I bring that up because there's an interesting trend here, because over the years, grade 5 continues to hold that highest proficiency score, followed by grade 4. And if you continue to look at the next highest proficiency scores over the years, it's grade 4. And then again, generally speaking, you'll see grade 6, grade 7, grade 8 kind of ranking as one of the highest proficiency scores in some of those years as well. But the trend is definitely more consistent with grade 5 being the highest grade level. Taking a look at PSAT, our data dashboard, as you notice here, we don't have any scores for 2018-19. Our data dashboard did not have any scores there. We do see an increased proficiency score in grade 9 and 10 over the last 2 administrations. And grade 11 students showed a steady increase on the SAT over the years and demonstrated 83% proficiency on the evidence-based reading and writing. Shifting over to math, page 12. Looking at proficiency on Smarter Balance now in grades 3 through 11. We're sort of seeing the opposite trend happening here from what we saw in ELA. And generally speaking, the strongest grade in all 4 years represented here is grade 3, followed by grade 4. Grade 5 then seems to be the next strongest grade. Again, there are also some instances where some grade 6 and 7 proficiency scores do match the strongest grades in grades 3 and 4. But again, generally speaking, for math, the strongest grades are grades 3 and 4 overall. And then if you calculate it and you take a look and you rank them, going down those columns, the math scores start to show a decline over the years in those upper grades through Smarter Balanced, PSAT, and SAT. Okay, the last table in this section is on NGSS in grades 5, 8, and 11. Overall, the strongest grade is in the elementary school, grade 5. And proficiency score over the years pretty much remains about the same. And the grade 11 student proficiency rate is showing a modest upward trend over the last 3 administrations.
The next 4 slides are going to address the proficiency of our students in our subgroups. Those subgroups include high and non-high needs and ethnicity. Across the past 3 assessment cycles, high need students' proficiency has increased in SBA, ELA, SBA math, and SAT evidence-based reading and writing, while NGSS proficiency has remained steady. High need students in SBA math improved from 40 to 48%, and non-high need students in SAT evidence-based reading and writing increased from 89 to 95% in the same 3-year period. There were significant gains at some school levels as well that we'd like to share. In ELA, high need subgroup, Burr increased proficiency by 13.4 points over the past 2 years. Roger Ludlow Middle increased by 10.6 points in the same period. ELA non-high need subgroup, Tomlinson, increased by 8.7 points, and math high needs subgroup, Jennings increased by 12.4, and Riverfield increased by 8.1. This next slide, highlights SBA proficiency trends in ELA and math by race and ethnicity. In ELA, the Black African American subgroup shows consistent growth over the past 3 years, increasing from 49% proficient in 22-23 to 50% in 23-24 and 52% in 24-25. In math, all subgroups improved from 22-23 to 24-25. This data examines SAT performance trends in evidence-based reading and writing and mathematics across student ethnic groups. The Hispanic Latino subgroup showed consistent growth in evidence-based reading and writing over the past 3 years, increasing 14 percentage points. This slide reviews NGSS science achievement by race and ethnicity. In 24-25, 4 of the 5 subgroups surpassed their 2018-19 proficiency levels, with remaining groups maintaining the level of proficiency. The next section is a section that deals with the cohort growth analysis. It's 2 slides showing the percentage of students meeting or exceeding proficiency, which is level 3 or 4 on SBA, ELA, and math for the past 3 school years. Unlike a year-to-year comparison by grade level, which shows horizontal, this table is organized to look across the diagonal, following an unmatched cohort of students as they move from one grade to the next. This table tracks ELA proficiency by the unmatched cohort over 3 years using SBA results. The students are followed diagonally from one grade to the next, noted by the color. So for example, 3rd grade 23-24 is light blue, and 4th grade 24-25 is also light blue, so you follow on the diagonal. The change in proficiency column captures how each grade level group's performance shifted from 23-24 to 24-25. Grade 3 to 4, which is light blue, shows the strongest growth with a 6.9 percentage point increase in proficiency. Middle school cohort 7th to 8th grade, which is the bright blue, grew 5.2 points, and grades 4 to 5, which is bright yellow, improved by 4.9 points, showing growth across elementary. We have a similar table which shows the math cohort at levels 3 and 4. 3 out of 5 cohorts improved. Grades 5 to 6, which is green, increased 5.9%. Grades 6 to 7, which is in orange, increased 2.4 points. And grades 3 to 4 increased 1.3 percentage points.
Our next set of slides is the average percent of the target growth achieved. So I'm just going to take a moment because this is what we would consider an important indicator for our next generation accountability standards. It's actually number 2 on the report, and we've talked about high need students, and all students realize that the high need students, English language learners, students with disabilities, and students who qualify for free and reduced lunch are essentially counted twice. They're counted in the all students category as well as a subgroup called the high needs group. With that being said, a lot of times this data point is considered the number of students who have met their proficiency target. So before I go into it, let me just clear up for the public understanding as well what the percentages actually mean. So this is a state hypothetical example. If you were to imagine this, your school had 4 students in it. The blue line, which is the one on the left, and the red line, which is what the student actually achieved. So the blue line, how much they needed to achieve in order to get the growth, and the red line, how much they actually did. So you'll see 2 out of the 4 students met their growth target. It's student 2 and 3. 1 went beyond it, and you're allowed to achieve up to 110% of points. And 2 did not meet their score, but the state does award points in a ratio up to what you earn there. So student 1 earned 70% of points, student 2 100, student 3 110, and student 4 60% of points. Overall, if that was your school, you would be reported the average of those 4 numbers, which is 85%. Does not mean 85% of students met their target, just means that 85% of the points are achieved within there. So with that being said, we also report, or I should say the state also reports a binary number. It does not count towards accountability, but we do use it as an important indicator. In this example, the binary number, as you see there, is 50%, meaning you've either met your score or you did not meet your score. I say this is important because it is individualized year to year. So you can, a student can, and again, this is 3 through 8, I should say, for Smarter Balanced Math and ELA. A student is placed in a category once they have an initial score, 1, 2, 3, or 4. And they're assigned how much they should grow from year to year. So students in categories 1 and 2 have higher growth rates than students in 3 and 4 who may simply need to maintain their score in order to achieve all their points on there. So with that being said, let's get to the district data here that we have in front of us. The first slide is our elementary and middle schools. And as I said before, I just want to highlight where some of our distinctions came from. So I'll start there. And in 24-25, Burr, Jennings, and Riverfield, if you look at their numbers, earned a distinction in high growth ELA for all students. And Jennings, Riverfield, and Sherman earned a distinction in high growth ELA for high need students as well. Once a school earns a single distinction, they're considered a school of distinction, but they could get up to 6 distinctions within there as well. I will say, similar to the others, you have a few close schools that are working really hard as well, as they all are, to get those distinctions. Holland Hill was less than 1 point away, and Mill Hill was 1 point away from these distinctions as well. With that being said, half of our schools outperformed their prior year's performance. I'd like to draw your attention to a few of the reported data points on this slide, including Jennings, which exceeded last year's percentage by 27 percentage points. The state considers that schools should have 100% in these categories because it's individualized by student. All students should essentially make their growth. So in order to earn all your points, they say it should say 100 there. So they're very close with that 27 percentage points. It represents the highest performance in the district and in all of the reported years. Riverfield gained 18 points from last year, North Stratfield 16 points, Mill Hill 10 percentage points, Woods Middle School 9 percentage points. Burr and Holland Hill are on an upward trajectory over the past few reported years with this average percent achieved in ELA. If you look at just district data across grade levels here, not looking at the schools together, we see that grades 4 and 5 have returned to pre-pandemic levels. More importantly, all grades have met or exceeded last year's average growth in language arts. And then switching gears a little bit to math, let me again start with our distinction categories for 24-25. If you look at Burr, Jennings, and Osborne, they each earned a distinction in this category. Of all students, math target achieved, and Jennings and Osborne also earned the distinction in highest growth for math high need students. 10 of our schools have met or gone beyond last year's growth indicators in math. And again, let me draw your attention to a few areas of celebration across our district. North Stratfield's increased by an impressive 22 points, Jennings by 17 points, Burr by 12 percentage points, Riverfield by 10, Roger Ludlow Middle by 9. This indicates that on average, our students are earning more points from one year to the next. They are a matched cohort, so the scores are, again, pretty consistent. Additionally, Burr, Mill Hill, Osborne, Woods Middle, and Ludlow Middle have been on an upward trajectory over the 3-year period reported in the data. To be consistent with the district data by grade level, grades 4 through 8, all grades except 7 have shown improvement since last year's reporting. We recognize that we always still have work to do in maintaining and advancing growth as students move throughout our system or progress from grade level to grade level with us in the school system.
The Lost Links is a standardized English language proficiency test for our K through 12 students, and it measures speaking, listening, reading, and writing skills. And this test is given once per year to students who are identified as ELML students, and it's given between January and March every year. And these growth scores are reported in 2 areas. You'll notice that there's a literacy score, which assesses the reading and writing skills, and the oral score, which assesses the speaking and listening skills. And they're broken down by those 3 grade bands that you see. You'll also notice that kindergarten is not represented here because you will only see growth data after they have been administered this test twice, right? So after they are administered this in 1st grade, then their growth will be calculated and represented. So generally speaking, what you're going to notice is the percent of the target achieved by our students for their literacy growth has increased over the last 3 years. If you look across those columns, and overall that first row shows that grades 1 through 12 increased from 62% to 71% to 72% of that target achieved. Grades 1 through 5 demonstrated a 5% increase if you look over the course of 3 years. Grades 6 through 8 demonstrated a 14% increase if you look over the course of 3 years. And look at grades 9 through 12, it was a 15% increase. Now, in looking at the oral section of the text, overall 69% of that target has been met in grades 1 through 12. We do see the most growth from the 23-24 school year to last year with our elementary school students at a 5% increase on that oral subtest. And I did take a look at the state numbers, and it did show a 3% discrepancy between the oral and the literacy, and that's exactly the discrepancy that we have. So it looks like in both scenarios, we are exactly in line with what the state showed as well.
We're going to move on to some of our internal assessments that we give each year. And specifically, we'll start with NWEA. The other one is Acadience, which Ms. Goss will do after this section. We do not give NWEA reading or language usage to our K3 students due to the dyslexia legislation. It does not meet the qualifications that the state has set for standardized assessment. With that being said, our NWEA is given to 4-8 reading and language arts and K8 math. We do consider it a universal screener. It is a dynamic assessment, meaning it adjusts as students answer questions to go up or down to figure out a level that is going to be reported to you this evening. And that is similar to the Smarter Balance test. The only difference is Smarter Balance will only adjust you within the grade bands. It won't adjust you outside of it. I will also say the data that's going to come in the next section, we had to pick a cut point. NWA doesn't do 4 levels similar to SBA, it does 5. We picked the 61st percentile and above to report to you this evening, which is considered high average and above. So with that being said, the 41st to the 60th percentile is an average category for them. They are not included in the data that we're sharing tonight. In general, it is predictive of SBA when students hit around the 60th percentile, which is how we made that decision in sharing the data that is coming next. And then lastly, let me just say again, this is a universal screener used by teachers and principals in designing instruction, grouping students, figuring out what should come next, what standards might be best taught or missed, how do we fill gaps, and how do we have students grow moving forward. So what you'll see in each of these slides is one full cohort plus this year's data that was just taken in September, early October. So the first 3 columns with numbers in it is last year's students, fall, winter, and spring, same students. And then the final fall column is this year's students of that grade, but do not necessarily match or do not match to the ones before it. So with the exception of 6th grade in this chart, all grade levels across the district are achieving at or above where they were achieving last year in the fall. You'll notice a slight decline from fall to spring in all grade levels except 4 and 8. It does become hard to dissect this if it's due to actual achievement, or as some of our colleagues will say, some testing fatigue sets in the spring. It is one of the last assessments they're given. So the students are taking all the SBAs and GSS, and then they have done a universal screener. And some of our colleagues have said kids are essentially done testing at that point. So that's why I say it's hard to dissect. We have made some remedies for that this year in the spring. Reading by school here. 5 of our elementary schools began the year higher than they did last year with our reading assessment. As Ms. Goss alluded to earlier in the presentation, if you draw your attention to McKinley, you'll notice they gained 13 percentage points in the 61st percentile or above from fall to fall. That is reported this year. 7 of our schools ended this year higher than they began last year, with many on an upward trend from fall to spring. In our middle schools, Tomlinson has grown from fall to spring last year in reading, whereas the remaining 2 schools showed status quo performance across the year. Each middle school began the school year with relatively stable performance. Language usage differs from the reading assessment in that it determines students' achievement in areas such as grammar, mechanics, and elements of writing. Interestingly, nearly each grade level began the year similar to last year's performance. All grade levels grew from fall to winter, and we have found the winter scores, when we compare them to our Smarter Balance that come out in the summer, to be the most predictive of performance. 7 of our elementary schools demonstrated growth from fall to spring last year in language usage, and that same ratio began this fall higher than last fall. Please see how North Stratfield scored 10 percentage points higher this fall versus last fall. Again, at our middle schools, Tomlinson performed higher in the spring last year than they began in the fall. Roger, Ludlow, and Woods maintained their performance from fall to spring. All schools this year began relatively close to where they were last year. Shifting gears a little bit to math, K-8. We see some small dips in fall to fall performance starting in grade 5. With that said, all grades but kindergarten showed improvement from fall to spring last year as a cohort. This means that they maintained their initial performance and exceeded the norm in order to end with a higher average percent in the spring. Just, I should note this of all of the assessments here, the norms change by season. So the norm that you're rated against in the fall is lower than the norm in the spring. So you're always hitting a different moving target in terms of the percentile. For our grades K-5 schools, nearly all schools ended the year higher than they began. Overall, from fall to fall, most schools began where they did last year. Mill Hill is the one outlier that began 10 percentage points higher than last year's starting point. Our middle schools, again, followed a similar trajectory of ending higher than they began, fall to spring, demonstrating growth across a school year in the content area skills.
Okay, this next brief section shows our Acadians reading scores, which, as Dr. Savajancic said, is our universal screening assessment for grades K through 3, and we administer this 3 times per year. This first table represents the overall composite score from last year, as well as from this fall. And overall, this fall, we have a very strong start overall at 82%. of our K-3 students who are at or above benchmark on that composite score, which is a combination of all of the assessments given at the grade levels. I will mention that when we first gave Acadians, overall, we were at 77% at benchmark. Last year, we were at 81% at benchmark in the fall, and now 82%. So each year, I do take a look at fall data to see that we are improving fall to fall. And then when we take a look at the composite breakdown by school, 8 of the 11 schools did as well as or better when we compare those fall to fall data points. It is a very rough analysis, but it's definitely one I do consider nonetheless. And the schools that have historically been lower performers are seeing the benefits of the systematic, explicit, structured literacy routines in K2. And they're definitely having a positive effect and are producing better proficiency rates in those classrooms. And this foundational skill work is really critical, because that foundational skill work has to be in place in order for us to see better reading outcomes in future years.
With that said, we have a few slides on College Board, Advanced Placement, and Honors Placement, which the latter of reflect our challenging curriculum and our district improvement plan goals, which I'll explain momentarily. This data, the AP data anyways, was disseminated in July by Friday Packet if you're looking for specific subjects, which we didn't include in this presentation here tonight, but it is available for you. So with that said, we were going through the presentation today. There's two areas here I just want to correct. So number of students with a 3+, 2025, that 802 should be 720, and we'll fix it on there. Again, number of students with a 3+ is not 802, it's 720, and the 94.2% is 89.4. Does anybody need me to repeat that? The last one, sure. Percent of students with a 3+, the second row up from the bottom, the final number should be 89.4. And again, we'll fix the errors and get them reposted. Overall, we have a fewer number of students taking the AP assessment, but there are just about the same number of exams being given over the course of the years. With that said, you'll notice that our average score has gone up, as has our percentage of students who are scoring a 3 or higher on the assessment if they are taking it in May. For participation in AP honors and non-honors, you'll notice we've taken the AP and the honors categories and separated them here and left the non-honors as a separate category. So we've taken our core courses, English, Math, Science, and Social Studies. I'll just draw your attention to the final row, which is our current population of each of those ethnic groups. So for the first column there, 4.62% or 63% of our population is identified as Black or African American. I say that because we would like to see reflection in our courses of a similar nature, which is what the district improvement plan called for. So if you were to add the columns across AP English, for example, 2.04, 9.62, etc., that will get you to 100%. So that is telling you that in English, I'll take the second column, 9.62% of students enrolled in AP English are Asian there. 6.2% of our school population at the high school also identifies as Asian. So let me give you a few takeaways now when reviewing this data. Asian students exceeded their population in all disciplines in what would be considered a challenging course by policy definition. For the most part, white students and students identifying with 2 or more races also met or exceeded their population statistic in taking a challenging course. And finally, Black, African American, and Hispanic and Latino students continue to have representation lower than their school population in challenging courses. On our second chart here, I'm just gonna bifurcate the columns from non-sped over to begin with. Basically, how this is calculated is every student in our district belongs to one of these categories, either special education or non-special education, high needs or not high needs. So those numbers get you to 100%. In reading this data, you'll see in English, for example, 96.5% of the AP population does not have a disability, 3.5% does. Dissimilar to that data are the ethnic categories. Students can be counted doubly there. So I just don't want you to wonder why they're not calculating out to 100. We did not go through and remove students, like if they took 2 English classes, 1 AP and 1 honors or 1 non-honors, we've counted them twice in there. So you're not gonna get a good read on getting to 100% within there. With that being said, some takeaways here. There is disproportionality between special education and non-special education students represented in non-honors courses versus courses considered challenging courses across our disciplines. Although not as pronounced, high-need students are also enrolled in more non-honors courses than what would be considered a challenging course. Please note again that in the high needs group, you're seeing the special ed category represented twice. In reviewing the ethnic subgroups from the 3rd column to the 7th, you'll notice that Asian students are more represented in honors and AP courses at higher levels than non-honors courses in all disciplines. Black and African American students and Hispanic and Latino students are more represented in non-honors courses across all disciplines, while white students and students who identify with 2 or more races are more evenly taking both honors and non-honors in AP courses.
Sorry. 10% or greater of the total number of days enrolled during the school year. We continue to implement several strategies to emphasize the importance of consistent attendance. Administrators and teachers also receive ongoing attendance data through Decision Ed dashboards. These dashboards are specifically designed to support proactive interventions and timely response to attendance concerns. The next 2 slides will compare chronic absenteeism rates across all Fairfield Public Schools. The first slide references our elementary schools over the past 3 years. All elementary schools show either a decline or stable rate during this period. McKinley demonstrates the largest decrease, dropping 7.7 percentage points, followed by Jennings, which decreased by 6.2 points over the same time frame. This slide references our secondary schools, which also reduced chronic absenteeism, with Fairfield Woods Middle School and Ludlow High School showing the largest decreases. Fairfield Woods decreased 3.7 points, and Ludlow High decreased 3.4 points.
With that said, it brings us to the close of our presentation, and we welcome any questions from the board.
Thank you very much. This is always a big and important one. So appreciate you, all the effort it took to put this together and to present it to us tonight. Are there questions? Mrs. Guernsey.
Thanks so much. I just have a quick question about the advanced placement testing. Did you say that that was available to us, or is it coming to us in a Friday packet, or where is that?
It is, it's in July 11th's Friday packet.
Oh, the one from last year. Okay, right. Okay. And because I think what would be helpful to me on that, for this presentation is to know the percentage of students that were enrolled in these classes that are taking the test. So, and I remember seeing that, but anyway, I don't remember the details. So thank you.
Yeah, I don't have it with me right now. It is an important statistic to look at. Not every student who enrolls in our AP class does take the test. Each page on that packet lists one of the courses, And at the bottom, it will give you how many were enrolled in the course versus how many were actually taking the test within the data you saw tonight. So good, thank you for sharing that.
Other questions? Mr. Krasnov.
My first question's on page 20 and 22. Sorry, thank you.
You ask questions. Don't put it back in the water.
I'm trying to understand when you look at this, why you look at just the previous year and not the slice in the change of proficiency.
On slide 20 you are, you said?
Yeah, 20 and 22. So instead of looking at where it was, let's say when they were in grade 3 and 22, 23, and then comparing it to where they are in grade 5, 24, 25 before they leave, like why are you just looking at the year before instead of looking at the change over the 3-year span?
Yeah, it's a simply a choice we made. We can look at either of them. We just chose to use the year before. That's how the state looks at average growth target as well. But yeah, we can always, it's simply a preference. We don't really have I don't really have an answer as to why we did it.
Well, the only
that
reason
way.
I asked that is, isn't that kind of like what we already got in a different chart? Because you're looking at the year before to.
Oh, so the other charts are year to year.
Right.
You can figure out the cohort from them without a doubt. But we generally just shared year to year, which are different students, same grade, same test. Whereas this one makes it a little more clear that these are generally same students, different grade, growth over time.
And to that point, do you ever look at when they start and when they leave, like elementary school, middle school? Because, some of my other questions where I notice a trend right now, I think a lot of us know why, but in middle school, the numbers seem to be down. I know a lot of their basic learning was during those COVID years, so it's kind of hard to quantify what happened at that period of time. But just moving forward, it might be a good way to look at it. And understand if it is really just the COVID years or if we have more things we got to work on when we get to the middle schools. Because at least in terms of what I see, those numbers tend to jump out quite a bit right now.
I think, Mr. Krasnov, it's a combination of both.
Okay.
And we are spending a lot of time focusing on middle schools and the why behind some of those drops in achievement. So I think it's a combination of the both. We're not going to blame this solely on COVID. We do have work to do, and we're in the process of working through some of those things currently.
I really appreciate that
Yep.
because to me, those were the big things glaring. Some of the other issues, like ethnicities and stuff like that, I know we've been working on. I know it's obviously not an easy thing to work on. But identifying trends we see with this data to me is the most important reason we do the data. So I just want to make sure we're using the data we have, and it sounds like we are. So thank you.
Yep, there's a lot of conversations. Patty goes out, meets with grade level teams at all schools, elementary and middle and high school. I think she's provided a lot of insight on the data to teachers so they understand it a lot better. And we are focused heavily on our secondary schools. Not that we're not focused on our elementary, but there is a higher emphasis this year and moving into the future on our secondary schools as well. Those are usually typically not the focus area. They're a little more difficult and challenging to move the needle, but that's our goal, and our focus is to make sure that all students, when they leave us, are prepared to do whatever they want to do when they leave us, whether it's post-secondary education or the workforce, that they're prepared to succeed.
Amazing. And one other question, when we do have massive successes in certain schools and grade levels, as we can see, some had very, very large growths. Is it our practice to ask how and why these large growths, and maybe we can emulate them in other locations?
Had a
Excellent.
meeting about it today, in fact,
Great.
with our coaches. We're tapping Jennings. I have a list of things. They are very specific in terms of the concrete action steps that they took with their students. Their growth was just incredible.
And then in terms of the tests, when you hit a certain achievement level, does it become more difficult to maintain certain levels? I know they try to do it in terms of growth, but I can imagine if someone's at a 99% proficiency already, to grow at 99% is probably fairly difficult. So is there a level we should be looking at, especially in the grade levels or the elementary school levels, that once we achieve that level, it's a very good achievement, and every school should kind of strive to be, let's say it's 80% achievement or whatever it is?
Yeah, I would say we'd want all our kids at fours, right? The good thing about the smarter balance is students are only going to get a question within the grade bands. So a fourth grader is never going to get a sixth grade question, even if they have achieved at that level. And the students who are at fours the year before have to maintain their score. So as long as they're maintaining, you're getting your growth points for them. As I said earlier, the ones that are at the lower levels, ones, twos, low threes, have a longer way to go. So the state gives them a greater number of points that they have to achieve from one year to the next. In that, if they make that target over several years, they'll eventually achieve proficiency on the test. So yeah, we want them all at fours, I guess, is the short answer. And as long as the student maintains where they are, they're doing great.
And in terms of that, how do we equate like special needs students that have been identified, just throwing out an example, let's say someone has been labeled with dyslexia, obviously they may struggle either before or after they find out that they have dyslexia. How is that equated into these scores? I know it's probably used to help identify some of the issues early on, but just in general, how do we equate that?
Yeah, so all students take the same assessment unless they are opted out for a significant disability, which they can't take, and that's very few. You'll see it at the bottom of the performance reports. Most of our schools are 95% or above in terms of participation with the typical assessment. There are accommodations that all students can get, and then there are accommodations that can be achieved through the PPT process. So for your example, a student with dyslexia may get some additional accommodations that another student doesn't get. You wouldn't know it looking at the screen. They're all individually administered. They're on-timed, but their data all wraps up in the same way that a general ed student would.
Like I'll give you one example. Cadence, some of it is timed, and if a student already has difficulty reading and might be able to still read it, but not at the speed that a cadence wants them, they're obviously going to fail the test. So
their norm may be lower. The fluency piece, and Ms. Goss can talk about that, is an interesting piece, because if you become too disfluent, you can't comprehend. So even with someone who may take longer to read, you got to get them to a level that is fluent enough to bridge the gap between the functional skills and the comprehension skills as well.
thank you. And also, Ms. Flynn, thanks for the answer. Appreciate it.
Mrs. Flynn.
Thank you. I don't even have my mic. Thank you guys very much for the presentation. I'm going to start with just the chronic absenteeism. Page number 46. Typically in the past, we've seen subgroups with this, no rush, but that might be helpful in a Friday packet just to see it broken out for a few reasons, especially for our elementary schools. We have like a variety of programmatics. I just think in the past, it would be helpful just for comparatives. Also, just something that was really striking to me, the schools that we saw, schools of distinction, we saw drops in chronic absenteeism. So just kudos for getting kids in school and keeping them in school. That obviously seems to help. Ms. Goss, you mentioned the word backfill for kindergartners and first graders, and I was trying to hop on Mr. Krasnoff. Are you seeing any indicators that you're needing to backfill that level of skill in our upper level, like our middle schoolers? Or is there any, maybe there's a better way to frame this. Are you readjusting or is there any need for readjustment for our upper level students as we are seeing the impact of the new curriculum on our younger students? Is that phrased correctly?
Yeah, so in terms of the foundational skills, I think that might be what you're referring to.
Exactly.
We do administer a diagnostic called the Core Phonics Survey. The Core Phonics Survey is a decoding screening that it assesses word attack skills in isolation. Essentially, that's what it is. And that really should be mastered by the end of second grade. We do have some students in third and fourth grade not yet mastered it, and that's critical. And so those students do need to have tiered intervention, if not more. And sometimes students haven't mastered it because they haven't received that systematic explicit instruction that they needed in lower grades. And so, you know, we're closing those gaps faster in K2 now because everybody's getting that instruction. And you can ask any K2 teacher that is delivering that structured literacy instruction. It's definitely working. So we're going to see a lot less of that as we go. But right now, you know, we have to fill those gaps.
Thank you. No, seeing spelling lists up in the middle school was amazing.
Yeah.
And I just had a few more. So you mentioned testing fatigue in terms of the impact on spring scores. Dr. Zavachandra, could you maybe just speak to kind of your approach now looking into next year as we kind of come into budget season and assessments and how we look at that? If I'm hearing the word fatigue and that the scores aren't even really giving us that great of a data, how are you kind of looking into it going into next year? Or
Yeah.
not next year, next year.
This spring, you mean, right? Coming up? Yeah. So what we've heard from our schools is that, you know, we want our students to do their best on these state assessments, right? So those usually get scheduled before some of our universal screeners in April and May when it happens. So by the time, you know, the third or fourth test rolls around, students sometimes, what we hear is, don't always put their best foot forward on the final assessment. So this year we, for NWEA, that would be 4, 8 in ELA and K8 in, K8 in math, would not have a spring NWEA. They would take the SBA as their final prompt, and we would use that for our data purposes moving forward with that. So we're going to enact that moving forward. The only difference is our K1 and 2s don't have an SBA, so they would keep it, the Acadians and the NWEA.
That's great to hear the reaction. Just so you hear the word fatigue, you hear that the data isn't effective. It's great that you guys are reacting so quickly. Sorry, I just have 2 more quick ones. A lot of schools, I think especially, I noted McKinley, Jennings, and a few others had really strong fall numbers. It's always been like a long held belief, Ms. Gus, I'm gonna look right at you, that, you know, coming back into the fall, things are dropping. Are there any summer strategies that have been put in place that we aren't aware of or that could be modeled at other schools? I just thought those were so great to see, that if we could hear about any of that work, or is it just the work from the spring ongoing, which would also be a great answer too.
In the summer slide is always something you worry about. And we did try to implement our summer school. But over the course of 2 years, the problem was we weren't getting the return on our investment. We had 18 days of summer school and the attendance was not good. And so in the absence of that, you know, sure, I think we could probably do something at some of those schools in terms of helping our families. You know, I can talk to the principals about that and maybe we can do something.
No. I was saying they were good. That the numbers held so high. So whatever they
Oh,
are
I see what
doing
you
seems to be.
The opposite.
It's the opposite of what I just said. So like, it was completely the opposite. So like, I believe McKinley, I think they may have started a percentage
Sorry.
point up in the fall. So I was just, it may just be the work of the spring held over the summer, which the summer slide did not. But if there was any strategies, I was just curious. We
Well,
just
then
hadn't heard of
maybe
them.
it's the repetition. Because when you think about explicit instruction, that's one of the elements of explicit instruction. It's the repetition, and the repetition probably stuck.
As a board member and a parent, that's great.
What
And then just one
It's
last one.
understood, sorry.
The Oh, similar to Mr. Krasnoff's, whatever some of these successful schools are doing, especially with Jennings, North Stratfield, I would surely hope that in the SIPs and the DIPs that we'll hear about later, those models, and just kudos to all of our schools and the hard work that they do. These numbers are really just numbers, but we know the daily work that they are doing is ongoing as this all comes together. Thank you very much.
If I can just add there, in our last PD day, some of those teachers who were in some of those schools were our presenters, sharing some of their strategies and work that they did across the district to share their successes. So we are trying to capitalize on it and share the wealth.
Any other questions? Mrs. Jacobson?
Hi, thank you for the presentation. Guys, I'm going to jump to slide 11, 12. So zooming out a little bit here on these two slides. So for ELA, we're going from 70 to 83, and things tend to trend up, right, as you get older. But in math, it flips around, and it goes from 76 down to 48. So what's the assessment or evaluation of that?
We are looking into a number of things, including curriculum and including instruction for math. I don't want to give a bumper sticker answer, meaning that there's a quick way to solve this problem, because I think it's broader than that. One of the things I know our elementary schools are focusing on, similar to the path that ELA took, is explicit instruction in math, especially in discrete skills. Things like fact fluency, ability to do math quickly, standard algorithms, and then getting into the critical thinking pieces of how math unfolds there. We also have looked at some of our standards that are within the curriculum. One specific example I'll give you, and again, I think it's broader than this, is in third grade, for example, we didn't start teaching multiplication, which is a third grade standard, at least up till 9, which they get tested on, until late winter, early springish time. So we're starting that earlier. We see it as a need. We're moving forward with it. Again, it's one small area that we're looking at, but we're doing that across grade levels. We know there's stuff we have to work on in math across the district.
I mean, this might be a conversation that we can continue when we do our
Yep.
dip at the next meeting, I presume. But just how this all feeds into
Yep.
that separate plan is going to be a cross item that I'll be bringing up at that meeting. Just math seems to be quite concerning.
Well, I'm just gonna say it is quite concerning. I think, our new math program director has dug in and rolled up her sleeves and has identified some areas I think that we can focus on. I also think that the lack of a resource, AKA a textbook at the middle level and some of our high school level, as a problematic area as well.
Bought textbooks.
We didn't buy all the textbooks though. So, and we did have some inconsistency in, prior to my arrival, of a commitment to a new curriculum, a reversal back to old curriculum, kind of in limbo. So I do think that we are focused on mathematics, especially at the secondary level, heavily.
Just when we do the dip, can we just get a little bit better explanation about that? Which should be at our next meeting, I presume. Just what's the assessment? What's the evaluation? I know that we purchased textbooks with ARPA money, so just what happened there. So if that's, so I understand what you're saying. I just want to understand, wrap my arms around that a little bit better. All right. Question I have is on 29 and 30. So this Acadians NWA thing. I know that so just for everyone knows, like we have to pick from what the state list is from the right to read. So we chose Acadians, etc. And that's only for K3. And then you guys have chose WA. My first question is, Does Acadians come in 4-8?
4-6. And we can, yes, 4-6.
Okay, so when you do say K3 and Acadians, and then you flip to grade 4-8 with NWEA, how are you then tracking, I don't know how to put it, benchmark or baseline to growth and proficiency between those two different assessments for different grades? Isn't that a problem?
They are different assessments. Acadians assesses discrete skills, NWA does not, which is why it didn't make the cut, so to say, for the state. I
And just for
will,
benefit of everyone, can you
Yeah.
just, what does that mean? The
Just-
fluency, the
yeah.
phonetical awareness? Okay.
yeah, so I mean, Ms. Goss can give you each of the assessments, but I don't know if you want to
Sure.
jump in on that.
Acadians is very different. Acadians assesses the early literacy skills. Those are the foundational skills, and they are very discrete, as Dr. Zavajancic said. But that's very necessary. And each one is timed, and it's timed for a reason because that automaticity piece is essential. It assesses to see who is at risk for future reading outcomes. If we didn't have that, then we miss kids. So we're fortunate, though, that we're able to administer what we call IABs. You've heard of that, the interim assessments. So even though in grade 3, we don't administer something like NWEA right now, we do have the IABs at our disposal, and we do embed those in our curriculum, and we do analyze those, and we do leverage those. And I will bring Jennings up again. Jennings is one of those schools that does more than just the 3 required IABs in the math and the literacy. They do what's called the focused IABs, which focuses the targeted skills. The regular IABs span several different standards, but the focused IABs focus on certain standards. So that's one of their things that they leverage, and that's one of the things they attribute to their success that helps them target. So we do have access to something a little bit more comprehensive for our 3rd graders.
There is, we would not compare the Acadians and the.
I know, that's what
Okay,
that's,
yeah.
I'm
So you're-
not that's not what I'm
yeah.
suggesting. I'm just saying, if you're, both for you, but also for families, if you're doing 2 separate apples to oranges, how does that longitudinally translate in terms of them following the progress of their child? So it's kind of like a gap. It's like a start, stop, right? Type of thing.
We have to
Okay.
look at standards, and we
Mhm.
also have summative assessments at the end of every module. Those summative assessments are aligned to standards as well. So we have to triangulate data in
I get
different
it.
ways,
Just wanted to understand the difference
Sure.
and make that a little bit clearer in terms of that. I've already made my case on ELA and math by level, so I'll let that go for now. I don't have it in front of me. I know I looked it up the other day, but also for the dip, slide 43 and 44, we had set specific targets, so it would just be helpful when we do that meeting. If these 2 charts can be included, because thank you for this very much. This is something that's really important to me. And if we are, I know that this is 25, 26, and I know we have the previous years, and I'm happy to look it up myself. I don't need, but just in the presentation, met, not met, in terms of those enrollments by these subgroup populations. I'm guessing not met by a lot of that. And then more importantly than just this data is why, what are we doing? What seems to be barriers? Because it's one thing to get the data, but it's another thing to say where are our successes, right? Where have we seen good progress? Because I know we definitely have. But how are we going to continue to make that progress? I don't just like to look at the data in a vacuum, but what are we doing about it, and how are we going to use that to continue to push forward? Because I know there's been progress here, but that we haven't met. So I'm interested in that at the next meeting as well. Chronically absent, I'm a little saddened. I went in and I pulled the high needs, non-high needs myself. So these are averages. And we just still have a lot of high needs kids that are really, really chronically absent, much so than the non-high needs. And a few years ago, we had really dug into that, and we brought to policy, and we wanted to bring that district level teams down to the building, and even within subgroup population. So we passed that policy, we put it in the DIP. We had a presentation a couple years ago on this, just separate. on this issue to really dig down into it. And it seems we've backtracked a little bit. So I'm just really curious, again, not for tonight, but as we talk in a couple weeks from now, possibly just from hearing from of our schools that have seen some big jumps here. What happened last year? Why is that? Is there anything specific that happened? I'm just confused on why some of that happened, especially with like our high schools in particular in terms of their high needs are like super, super high. So just looking for what's happening, why is this the case, and how are we going to address some of this going forward to try to make some inroads. So thank you so much for this. It's really helpful, and it's important for us to do all those celebrations that you've been pointing out, but also acknowledge where we've got some issues and how we're going to tackle those and move other things forward too. So thank you so much. Thank you, Mr.
Celebrations,
Peterson.
Challenges.
Yeah.
Any other
Absolutely.
questions? Ms. Maxicali.
Thank you. And first, thank you to the board members who took a lot of my questions. So I was happy to start crossing things off. So, I too shared the concern about that math drop in middle school and high school, which is really a stark contrast to the elementary school progress. Clearly something's going on there. Also wanted to know for that slide 44 of, it's not that the numbers surprised me, but are we making any movement in terms of those subgroups and greater enrollment in our challenging courses? And again, never at any point have I been looking to see dramatic jumps, because I'm not sure that we would have had the support in place for such an artificial jump. But, just hoping to hear that when we do get more about that, what are we doing for supports? Because we really believed in policy that so much of it was going to be about communication with the families, and you have a child, really who could use this, additional support and who could use this push. So, just wanting to hear more about that and where are we improving and where have we not. Also shared the concern about the chronic absenteeism. But some different questions. First, I wanted to just confirm, because I know the SAT is changing all the time. Is the only one, I want to thank you for that red band. I was one of the people who was always pushing. I wanted the most recent pre-COVID test score to keep benchmarking against. That's where we were. We were on a great path of improvement over the previous years. COVID happened and we've been recovering ever since. But besides the NGSS, at this point, would you have said that any of the other scores, any of the other tests are dramatically different, or do you still find a value in that red column? That made complete sense to me in my head. If I need to explain it again, I will.
I think it's a difficult column to use because there has been so much change in terms of enrollment in the district as well. So when I looked during redistricting conversations, I remember board members were a little confused as to why there was some, not in tune with what we were discussing. And a couple of years ago, there was well over 3,000 students in the district that were new to Fairfield, that were not in kindergarten or first grade. So there was a lot of people that came from other places into the district. So I would be hesitant to keep using a comparison when there's a significant population of kids in the district that may not have started in the district, so to speak.
So I guess to that, I have a couple comments. First, I think whenever that there is some backstory that it's helpful for all of us to have, I would welcome that as part of the presentation. And obviously you would couch it in terms that it's not that anyone's making excuses or anything, but that these are factors. And if there's, specific schools or specific grades where that might need to be especially noted. I mean, obviously something like, whether it's some foundational skill that we're working on or something we're tackling in our curriculum, and there's been a tremendous influx in that particular year, I think that's valuable for the board to know, not as an excuse, but as a factor of understanding the data. I think that's a fair point. The only thing I would say is that we've always had, obviously, some, to degree a bit of mobility in our population. That's always been the case, but we've also, as a district, always come together to grapple with it. And so that data point, and there may come a point where you make the argument we shouldn't be publishing that anymore. I'm always open to hearing it. But the district worked very hard to get to that point in time, obviously we're working just as hard to get back to and exceed it. And so I think that's where I've always found it helpful. But again, open to hearing at some point, this is no longer a helpful barometer. And obviously, once we get enough columns in there, I think that is where we should focus, is just on our own past 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, I'm happy to see if we can look to see how many students from 18-19 are still with us.
I guess to me, what it was about, it wasn't even about the specific students. It was about the work of the district, and the work of the district had created, I'm going to make up a number, an 80% proficiency rate. It was the district that had done it. I agree. It's obviously completely different bodies in the seats at this point. It's different staff, but it's the work of the district had achieved a measure, and we want to meet and exceed that. And
I don't disagree that we are striving for every student to achieve. I don't know, looking back to 18-19, if it's making any difference in how we approach this.
I think for us as a board, it was an accountability point that we wanted it as part of our conversation. Well, of course, in 22-23, it was explicitly, what are we doing to address the COVID loss of learning? And seeing that obviously a decided drop, which was what we expected. And then we want to see, and what are we doing now to pull that back up? But again, I just throw out there that I'm open to, there comes a point where we just need to be measuring against ourselves in the past 4 to 5 years. But I had always appreciated it being there for certainly previous to this. I had a question about the NGSS, because as I recall, and obviously not a science person, but one of the tremendous challenges about the NGSS was the fact that it was on 4 branches of science, and they're taking it junior year, where they've had the high school of experience of 3 years, and we were counting on middle school. And of course, Justine's not here to speak to this, but I don't know if anyone else can, of how well served do we still feel by our current curriculum structure, because that is a challenge. You know, again, those 4 branches and 3 years of high school.
I do have some notes from Justine, and she's still concerned about that. Meaning, if students don't take certain courses, then they're obviously not exposed to the content that they're going to see on the test, and it's cumulative. She also did say that, you know, there was one school that tested very early, thus they did not learn some of the tested content. So all of that is a factor in terms of how they score. So
Justine's been working hard to get students to follow a core pathway versus to branch off into electives, to Ms. Goss's point there. And that's biochemistry or some form thereof in physics when they hit to high school, versus taking something like forensics or some other course within there. Not that those are bad courses, but they don't teach the 4 branches in a similar way that would meet the standards of the test.
Has she expressed any interest in greater mandating? Obviously, the graduation requirements was supposed to move us into greater freedom and pursuing your interests. In the meantime, though, you must take this standardized test, which is, oxymoronic, but did she express any interest in wanting to change how we approach the freedom within our high school, or no?
I haven't had that conversation with her, and I don't want to speak without having her weigh in on it. But I do know she's working on curriculum to make sure that there are options for students to take the core curriculum.
Okay. I'll also add, because we just talked about this, the proficiency rates for high need students is also affected by this. Because, we want to keep students on grade level, and that gap will persist because some of these students then will not be taking some of those courses. So that makes it difficult, and they obviously have to take the NGSS. Same idea.
Okay. Again, just wanted to raise the notion that we know that that's a factor that science is dealing with. Appreciate all the talk about the foundational work in terms of the math facts, and obviously the corresponding, I hope, background in ELA in terms of that foundational work. Other questions, I also share Mrs. Guernsey's concern regarding the percent taking the AP, and I was wondering if we're taking any steps to increase. And again, to me, there's always the factor that taking the AP exam comes with a very high price tag. And for some of our students, it's not worth it to pay that. So I think there are a whole sort of reasons for why some students won't take it. But is there anything that we can do to get a student who isn't sitting for the AP to take something where we can get a barometer, a measure of how well did the course meet the curriculum requirements?
You mean outside of actually making them take the AP test?
Well, they could sit and take a released one.
Sure. We've not looked into that. I mean, I guess the easiest solution would be to, if you take an AP class, you take the AP test. But it does come with a budget impact. If that were a way to go. I have not had conversations of taking a release test and having it scored internally and counting the data similarly to.
Just an idea.
I hear you, but yeah, we haven't had that discussion.
Okay, okay.
Mrs. Guernsey.
I have two more questions, but happy to
No,
defer.
I'd love to just jump in on that. And one thing that has worked well in other districts across the country is the district will cover the cost of the AP test. And if you don't show up and take it, then you owe them money. So that becomes an incentive. But I would also say there are a lot of students that the test isn't important to them. They enjoy the rigor of the curriculum. And so like, what do we care? Do we care? I don't know. So it's complicated, but thank you for asking that.
No, and actually I agree with that second point, that I love the idea that the students just want the rigor of the course. On our end, though, there's the accountability of how well are we meeting the academic rigor of that course, and we can only do that with the measurement of the exam, which is the ultimate measure of both the skills and content of the course. So, but I'm entirely sensitive to that point as well. My last two quick questions. I love what you've just said about the NWEA of just letting go of that spring one, and that the winter one you indicated it has been the best barometer of SBA results. So my suggestion would be, when we get that chart next year, could they be integrated somehow into a single chart? Do you see what I'm
Well,
saying?
interestingly, we took it out. I don't know if you remember last year we put it in. We had the line overlaid the bar chart. And the winter was where it touched most often. That met the SBA score. So we have that data. It's easy enough. Every time a student takes the test, it gives us a predictive score if they were to take the state test at that time. With that being said, NWA did renorm this year, meaning they've taken all their data and, switched up some of their standards there. So we do have to look to see if it's going to match winter again. It did last year, but we're on a new set of norms right now, which seem to be rating a little higher than they did last year.
Okay, again, especially where we are outright going to drop that as a benchmark, but the SBA is in essence a substitution, it would make sense to me to see that on a single chart, but I leave that to you to work your magic. And then my final question was about Acadians, and that was number 4, slide 40. And kind of wondering how, Ms. Goss, how you feel about the two fall, so the lower one on, well, it's slide 40, sorry. Fall 24-25, fall 25-26, very much a mixed bag of how the students are improving, where we now have a year under our belt of the new ELA curriculum and approach. And I was wondering if you can speak, again, nothing dramatic, there's nothing, but obviously I'm waiting to, blow the roof off here. So I was wondering if you can speak to, did that surprise you at all, or any factors that you think contributed to not having just straight, you've now been in with this curriculum for a year. Obviously kindergarten affects this also, but for grades 1, 2, and 3, why that fall starting point for 25-26 might not have been consistently higher.
Really consider that, actually. But I was looking overall of how we're steadily increasing overall as a cohort. Like I said, we went from 77% to 81% to 82%. And then I even looked at how our cohorts looked going from 2 years ago to last year on Smarter Balanced, and how us implementing a new curriculum with new resources, we increased. I mean, that was so incredibly exciting. Looking at some of these scores, We have new measures that come into play in kindergarten and in first grade in the winter. Some of those measures are a little harder to administer online because you have to keep up with the students. And so even though we're still kind of learning how to give these assessments, I don't know if some of that attributes to some of the variability. If you don't calibrate and you don't do these often enough, that might be a part of it. These are universal screeners, but they're also progress monitoring measures as well. And so for some of these teachers, maybe they're not giving the progress monitoring measures as often. Maybe the coaches, maybe the interventionists are giving it. I would have to dig into that. So I'm not quite sure why some of this is varied. Didn't really look into that like that. I will though.
And I'm
Yeah,
not
I don't
looking at it
know.
as a negative because again, you know, I'm all excited and all in on the curriculum changes that we made. It was just something that I noted, but also that is also an invaluable reminder that especially with this age child, it really can be the actual administration of the tests and how do you approach that can affect this as well. So thank you for that reminder and
could
thank
be.
you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Mrs. Flynn, did you have any? Mr. Kresna?
I just have a follow-up to that one. On the Acadians, when you do it by cohort and it goes fall to fall, are you saying that grade 2 in the fall of 24 was grade 2, but 25 to grade 3? Or is that grade 2 again testing in the fall who was in first grade? It just changes the way we look at the percentages and the increases.
If I go to page 39, and I think this is what Mrs. Flynn might have been referring to, and looking how students held on to their skills going from the spring to the fall. If I look at kindergarten as a grade level, right? 75% at benchmark when they left in the spring, and then they started first grade at 78%. So they held and even increased. Same thing happened in grade 1, 76%, and when they started in the fall, 86% were at benchmark. Look at grade 2, 82 to 84%. I mean,
So as I'm saying, it's a
Yeah.
diagonal.
yes,
So it's not grade
that's a
1
rough
across,
cohort.
it's grade 1, but then they test as grade 2 in the fall. It looks very different if you look at it that way. Okay, thank
And
you.
if you look at it like in a rough cohort like that, I mean, that's also encouraging.
So the best
lot of
thing to do would
factors.
be take the fall in the column above and compare it to the fall in the column below. So kindergarten, the fall 24 would be grade 1, the fall 25, correct?
Are you still on slide 39?
Yes,
Yes.
thank you.
So slide 40, which is where you started, you can't do that with because those are all the grades combined into one score.
But like, for
Exactly.
example, grade 1 went from 74% to 86%. That's a pretty big jump. Right? Am I reading that right? Yes. Okay.
Goes straight and then.
Okay. All right. I was just checking. Thank you.
All right, any further questions? Seeing none, thank you so much. This is a big lot of work and a lot for us to process. We appreciate your time and your patience with us. Have a good night. Thank you. All right, moving on to item 6A of the consent calendar, the approval of the October 28th, 2025 regular meeting minutes. Can I have a motion to approve the items in the consent calendar? Mrs. Jacobson, seconded by Mrs. Guernsey. Any discussion? Seeing none, back to the board. All in favor? The vote is unanimous. Thank you. Item 7A, approval of the 2025 to 2026 revised student calendar. With the recommended motion that the Board of Education approve the 2025-2026 revised student calendar. Can I have a motion? Mrs. Maxon Kennelly, seconded by Mr. Asa. This is a reminder, this is the current year calendar that we've had to adjust for the 3rd of November, February special election. Have any further comments? Ms. Maxon Kennelly?
Just one quick comment through the chair to the superintendent, Mr. Testani. I assume that there'll be a notification about this out to parents ASAP.
Tomorrow morning, once you guys approve, we're
Okay, thank you.
ready to go.
Any other questions? Seeing none, any comments from the public on the 2025-2026 school calendar? Again, the current school calendar. Seeing none, back to the board. All in favor? That vote is unanimous. Thank you very much. I put on 7B, discussion of possible required language changes to policy 6111, student calendar. because of the 2026-2027 calendar that we discussed last week, and we're having a first read of again. Again, the whole issue with this was the fact that policy 6111 says the first day of school for students shall not be prior to the last Monday in August, inclusive of student orientation. Mrs. Maxon Kelly, do you want to make some comments here?
Yeah, sure. And first I want to say thank you to Mr. Asa for sending in some language suggestions just to have in our back pocket if we decide to move forward with this. I am prepared to put this on our Monday agenda based on the conversation here. If it looks like that again, just the sense of the body is that we are interested in pursuing that change. Definitely planning to have that discussion there. I don't know that we would vote anything out definitively, but we certainly can do the job of wordsmithing a few options.
Ms. Maxon
to
Kelly, you're
present.
talking about the Monday Policy Committee agenda.
That's correct. I'm
Not
sorry.
full
Yes,
board
the Monday
agenda.
Policy
Just to-
Committee agenda. But before I just did it on my own, coming up with options, I really wanted to get the sense of what the board was interested in.
Mr. Asa?
So I did send in some policy language suggestions. I would support option B when we get to that for discussion. So I would be looking for a change to the policy.
Option B starts on August 31st.
Scratch that. Yes, I'm thoroughly confused here in my own comment. I sent in the suggestions if we were going to go with option A, but just for my point, I am not in favor of that. But I'm also not opposed to bringing it up in policy for future years.
That's the thing. This is something that is going.
Yeah, and I did look in future years, and I did outline the years that it does come up in the next 10.
Ms. Jacobson.
Thanks. Thanks. I went back and tracked for years where this happened before, which is the early 20s, 20 to 21, 21, 22, 23. And we just did follow the policy and we started late. But the other things that the problem was is that we were pushing so late into June, which prompted the policy because we were going into, that third week of June, which is where we did the policy. So if you are looking at it, I don't have it in front of me. I'm sorry, I know we don't have a copy here, but when I did review it the other day, I think it's in the AR actually. Can we review with administration possibly? It's very explicit about spring and fall conferences and early releases. And if we're trying to move away to have less early releases, that's something that probably needs to be reviewed. And then also, regardless of which calendar, there's going to need to be a change because, or on one of them, orientation also has to start on that last week as well. So one of these that won't work for. I think it's. So whichever one has the orientation on the Friday. So that's.
Why can't orientation be?
Because the policy says that orientation and the first day of school cannot start before the last week of August, including orientation. It's like no kids are going to school before that last week.
Or the last week in August?
Right, so orientation would be the 31st, so to speak. First day would be the 1st.
I wouldn't think the 28th is before the last week in August, because the 31st is not the last week in August.
Well, it's the last, it's very.
the last
I
day.
don't have a copy.
Mr. J, you're speaking about the policy specifically.
Yes,
I'll read the policy. The first day of school for students shall not be prior to the last Monday in August, inclusive of student
Monday.
orientation.
right.
The last day for students, no later Friday. So that's the sentence that she's talking about.
That's the sentence that I'm talking about, so. Not that I'm looking to change it, I'm just bringing it for the next conversation, so. Some of those details. You have to change it either way. You have to change the calendar or you have to change the policy. I don't know. Having 6th and 9th graders come back a weekend earlier just so they could attend their orientation, I don't like that idea. Just make it on Monday.
We don't have to solve all future calendar issues now, but if we can, yeah. Mrs. Guernsey.
I was just going to say, at the high school level, the orientation isn't just that single day before. There's a pre-orientation that takes place where they tour the building. So they'll be back anyway. So just when you're thinking about the policy language, it's a little bit more loosey-goosey.
Or maybe
and-
just, reach
yeah.
out to our head principals and see
Yeah.
what they think. Yeah, like,
Thank you.
also. I'm just pointing out what the policy says right now. Thank
Fair enough. So, Ms. Maxine-Kelly, do you think you have some sense of what policy you should be doing?
I think I'll have an even better sense after 7C.
Fair enough. All right. Shall we move on? Item 7C, discussion of the 2026-2027 student calendar. Just again, for the public, we discussed this last meeting, had some realizations about it. Superintendent Tassani has come up with two. So, Ms. Maxine-Kelly? Oh, you did have your hand up. Mr. Testani came up with two different options for us to look at. I don't know if you want to introduce them briefly. One has a start date. Option A has a start date of August 25th with full day conferences. It gets us out on the 9th of June, excuse me. Option B has a 31st of August start with the half-day conferences remaining in place, and in-school Veterans Day, and students leave on the 10th.
Correct. So option A was basically a similar start date to the current school year that we're in now. After the discussion from last board meeting, that's where I came to the drafting option B. That kicks us out one additional day to the 10th. And again, as it was mentioned earlier by Mr. DeWitt, Veterans Day is a school day, as our veterans would prefer now, so thank God for that. It does change slightly the October and March conferences from 3 to 2 half days. There is as you can see, a third half day in October, but that's only for early dismissal for the high schools for PSAT. And on the early dismissal on the 20th and 22nd of October, that would only be for K-8. The high schools would stay in all day. And I think on the conference days, the 20th, you have Tuesday after school meeting, so that extends the workday for the teachers anyway. We did the math. We should have no issues based on class sizes to get all the conferences in. The only other option, if there was any thought that there might not be enough time, we could move up the early dismissal by 30 minutes on just those days if necessary. But again, I think it's a pretty clean calendar, not much controversy here.
Ms. Maxine-Kelly.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for all the work that went into this, because we certainly threw a lot at you at the last meeting. And I think almost I believe everything somehow is represented in one of the two drafts. The comment I wanted to lead with was we're getting emails from the public advocating for option blank. And I just thought it was worth indicating to the public, it's not that it's option A or option B. What I thought you did a great job with is in option A and B are all the permutations, whether it's Veterans Day, yes or no, how the conferences can be handled. But in fact, there can be a completely different option, which is cobbling together the best of both. So just that, I'm not advocating for an option C, D, or E. I'm simply saying that for the sake of the public, it's not an either or here. It's everything sort of got represented, and now it's up to us to pull together that final draft. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Ms. Tracy.
Yeah, and Mr. Testani, through the chair to Mr. Testani, I apologize for not picking up on this because I did give some feedback, but in October, the 22nd for the evening conferences, should we think about moving that to the 27th because of the additional time that like we did or like you're proposing in March? Or is that?
Yeah, we could move it either to the 13th or the 27th. That would not be problematic, similar to what we did in March. It would not matter to me which one. Again, it doesn't impact high school, so, and the 14th doesn't impact elementary, middle school, so we could make it the 13th or the 27th. I think parents would probably prefer the earlier date, the 13th, but
And just to, one thing you mentioned was the idea, if needed, of moving up the early dismissal. Right now at elementary, it's 1:40, and middle, it's 12 something. So that would be possible because the high school would not be getting out on those days early, correct?
yeah, we would have no issues with transportation.
Thank you.
Mrs. Jacobson.
When I got the revised options here, I read I and then I read B. And I was like, wow, option A just reads so much cleaner. Even though I understand the problem with the earlier start. So that's not the piece that's bothering me. I mean, I just am curious what other people's feelings are like all of these half days. There's so much, B just has so much disruption. So, and I just like the way, Mr. Testoni, that you put together A.
Well,
Where there's just so much
yeah,
better
the one
flow
thing,
instructionally speaking.
the
Not-
one, yeah, just sorry to cut you off. The one thing in A that I think can also carry over into B, would be the elimination of the half day on January 12th and on May 11th, which I think then would give you the best of both worlds.
Well, I did have those circled, and that's a follow-up question. What are those for? Right, why are those added in? But just my overall feeling is I like the cleanness of A, but obviously starting later if we don't change the policy. The problem with that is then you have to pick up 4 full days and you're gonna have to find them somewhere. So that's the issue. If you were just to bump out the start of A, to actually comply with the policy, where are we gonna find making up those days? Week and then in the snow days. So, those are my, if you're looking for feedback, Mrs. Meskin-Kennelly, that was my, feel is that it just, all these half days seem so, there's like barely a week that there's not a disruption, in this calendar. So, that was my feeling. I also,
Well,
wanted.
just to, I mean, in option B,
Uh-huh.
September, there's no half days, and there's not the first half day for elementary. Well, high school only has one until November 25th. They only have the 14th of October. And elementary only has the 2 in October, until the 25th of November. And then it gets straightforward in B. There's, the December 23rd, obviously before the long break. If we eliminate the 12th and of January, that gives us another nice stretch of time. And then again, if we eliminate May 11th, sorry, not May 27th, May 11th, we have a nice strong end to the school year from, again, high school is not really impacted in March at all, with any half days. They have 0, and they would not have any in January if we made that change, in May, April. So it makes it really clean.
Can I ask you a question? The PD days are significantly different between the two options, so I just wanted to assess how that might play. So A has 7 PD days listed on it, and B has 11. So how was PD considered to be repackaged or re-envisioned? As A has 7 PD days listed, and B has 11. I mean, I don't know if it wasn't an issue, then I'm guessing it wasn't an issue, but it's just something to think about. Was that gonna work or not work? Either one better or not better? So just want to be mindful
Well,
of how you're doing your PD.
Well, the PD days in October are, there's 2 for high school only.
Yeah, I mean,
And
I
the
just
same
counted
in
them.
March, yeah.
I'm just asking
Yeah,
you.
it really just, the additional days are really front loaded into the high school in B.
Okay, so you didn't anticipate any issues with delivering whatever you need to do for PD with the variance between these two calendars?
No.
Okay. The only thing that I mentioned is I might mention is depending on where we land as our last date, I might exercise the clause to take the 6 snow days down to the 5, because that's also something that's in there to, we like rigidly said you have to have 5 snow days included. And I might take that down to the 5 if necessary, just so we can avoid coming close to that 18th, because we have to finish by the 18th, including the snow days. No matter what we pick, we have to finish by the 18th. And knowing that we also don't have graduations on Fridays. So I'm counting the end side too. And knowing that we want to try to have that on the last day if at all possible. So I'm just counting that. That's it. Sorry. Thank you. I'm done.
Mr. Krasnov.
Thank you. My one question was, is there any way to possibly make February 11th a full day PD instead of an early dismissal? I just think we're going to have some absenteeism, possibly abutting that break. Yeah, well, sure, but
Well, if
like,
we
is
make,
there a way to make the 12th not a PD day, and make it a full day or something
you
like
mean the
that?
11th?
The 12th of January is a half as well.
Yeah, we could make, well, if we make it a full PD day, then it's a day off for kids. We have
Yes.
to make it, we have
Yes.
to. So you want the 12th of January, a full PD day?
No, the 11th of February.
Oh, the 11th of February. If we make it a full PD day, if you want to guarantee a lot of absences from staff, you just bought it.
I'm
right?
pretty sure you're gonna have a lot of absences from students though, if you do a
Yeah,
half
I'm
day,
sure.
half day too. So I'm just.
Well, if we do that, then the 11th will be the last day of school.
Well,
Or we do 180.
well, couldn't you make another one a full day? Like if one's a full day, you get rid of another half day, don't you?
No.
Oh, because the half day counts as a full day.
And I'm happy to make it the 12th of January, the 11th of May, full days, and go 180. I'm happy to do that. Because
I'm just
I
throwing
think
out
you get
stuff
more
'cause
instructional
we
time.
got a lot of emails about February break, and I'm not saying we should have a February break, but my concern is if we put a half day that day, you're almost inviting people to take it as a February break. And if you're going to do that, you might as well just have the day off for students. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
Mrs. Flynn?
Just a note for option draft A, Veterans Day is still a no school day. So if we were to restore that, we would collect a day there. So I'll give my points first. I'll agree with. So if you look at draft option A versus draft option B, Veterans Day is still no school on A. So if we were to flip that, because I agree with you, that sounded like that was at least an option, we pick up one, I'm gonna preempt with. Option A just looks a little bit cleaner to me. I agree. We've heard a lot about the half days and the disruption, especially 3 weeks in a row in October. That just looked a little bit cleaner to me. I'm literally just trying to find enough days to get kind of like a mix of the both. So if we added Veterans Day back in, if we were to bump the last day of school to the 10th, there were some discussions about having graduation before the school year ended. I think that may be something to explore so that we could extend that week without having to bump graduation. We may have discussed it in leadership. I don't remember. Having graduation prior to the last day of school.
Yeah,
So having graduation on Thursday evening and having the last day of school be Friday. So we still are inclusive of those instructional days without having to worry about graduation being on the Sabbath on Friday evening. So that was one of my thoughts. And then including Veterans Day, I think that gets me to 3. So then, but I like I said, I'm kind of playing with A. I think it's kind of right now a little bit of a Tetris to me, to be honest. I don't think we're gonna get a full week in February. That's the main email we've heard from a few parents, but I have to say, just for me personally, the level of disruption for instruction for our upper level students in that time of year is concerning, especially our AP students. And like I said, I think we're looking at this in terms of instruction and how we can balance that for our families, whether they're traveling, working, or trying to make sure their kids are prepared for tests. I think we have to balance all three. So I'm just trying to count some days. So I'm definitely in favor of being in school on Veterans Day. Thank you to Mr. DeWitt and the comments from the Legion. I'd love to play around with that week in August. I'm happy to amend policy. And also, I'm happy to have graduation before the end of school if that helps get us all kind of to a compromise. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. So we could swap Veterans Day in and give February 11th off. So that's an even swap.
I wasn't going to do an even swap, but I'll take it.
All right. Or the 16th. I mean, you can do it either way, but that's an even swap. We can add a day to back, like in B to A of June 10th being the last day. But we still have to find 4 days if you don't want to start on the 25th of August.
That was my point, is that
Yeah.
I don't want to use Veterans Day for a February break. I don't find a need for that. I think that February that's contained in these are appropriate. I would use that 10th to try to get to start later, to almost get that
Sure.
week. You know what I'm saying?
So you
So that we could-
Veterans Day and then June 10th get
And
you
then find
two.
two
We got-
other ones. I'm just trying to look for the other two. I'll keep
They're-
looking.
Yeah, they
But you
don't
can-
exist
They
now.
might not exist, but that's.
April,
All right. Mr. Rinaldi?
I think, too, this is like. But, April break. It's on. But I do think that, thinking about April break, it's very stressful for working families to find care in the middle of April. And camps are very expensive at that time of year. And a lot of times people are taking off around Easter, which this year is very early. I really, am a huge advocate. I know it hasn't been done in the past of a February break, and to even taking the 12th, that date, and putting it to the 16th, taking the Veterans Day, putting it to the 17th, and just, finding room to actually have a February break, even if it's, I'm trying to understand the reasoning behind the mandated April break that is tough for working families.
Mrs. Guernsey?
Thank you for that comment. And I think that, just to respond to you through the chair, I think that part of the reason that we have kept that week is not because we decide it, but because regionally, that's the week that the other schools are taking off. So we have students like that are in aquaculture and other programs. So it's super disruptive to them because then they don't have any break and the sports are complicated. So I see your point, but it's like we set the schedule, but also like we kind of don't, because and so some of these conversations might be conversations that we could bring to ECS if if we wanted them to look at the calendar differently. That's sort of a place to start with that, maybe. But I get your point, and I think our hands feel a little tied because we don't want to probably exclude those segments of population, but I get it. I was just gonna make a couple comments. I mean, obviously, I'm not voting on this, but for February 11th, that half day, we would have data on absences for the past years, because we've done that before. So I would think that would be helpful to know. I mean, if it is a problem or not, I'm not sure. We could guess, but we probably have that, so that could be interesting. About graduation, this has come up so many times, and the high school principals really have always felt strongly that graduation has to be on the last day, and there are like 5 reasons for that. So I would just hope that this board, if they decided to move up the graduation, that they took into consideration the needs of the high school principals, because there are a lot of logistics around that are really complicated, and they also involve like the middle school graduations and like where the students are physically to do the rehearsals. So it's like, that's like tricky. And then I would just ask if this board would take into consideration our AP student schedules as we start taking away courses from that top end. I mean, I prefer the early start only because it gives those extra days to those students. So just to consider that. Thank you.
To Mrs. Rinaldi, the whole premise around April is everyone else takes April. They're not gonna, and if staff live in those I mean, the number of staff members that would have children that were not in school would be a huge issue because at least 70% of the staff, and that's only teaching staff, do not live in Fairfield, and their kids would be off that week. That's one of the main reasons, or probably the biggest reason. If we had school on April break, it would be problematic. And yeah, we could get the date on the week before the President's Day weekend. That wouldn't be problematic to get.
Well, why, so,
And graduation 2 years ago was the day before the last day. We had that for, I forget what reason, but yeah, Friday was the last day. And I didn't feel like there was something that was lost, but I know that people prefer that everybody goes home and nobody has to come back, but
Can I interject quickly, just not to put another variable in this equation? The 6111 policy also mandates that the graduation date should be no earlier than the 180th day in the adopted school calendar. Since we're pushing down to 181, we're kind of getting close to that. So just to file that away. Mr. Asa.
So to Mrs. Jacobson's point, I've been a longtime advocate of trying to do away with as many of these half days as possible. So I did want to point out, though, that this proposed calendar compared to years past does have 2 less because of the conferences. So I do appreciate that. And with regard to the conferences, I initially loved the idea of a full day of conferences, but then when I started thinking about it, I thought about the teachers that do have 25 kids in a class. And while they're only 15 minutes, that is, imagine those of us that work in non-education, if we had 25 back-to-back meetings to accomplish something. And even if they're 15 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour, it does seem quite cumbersome. The other issue that I started mulling over in my head was, if you just do conferences on one day, what about the parents that can't make it that day? And let's say out of a class of 25, you've got 5 parents that absolutely can't make it that day. The beauty of having at least 2 days to do it gives you that flexibility. Otherwise, you start running into the fact that parents can call for a meeting, and teachers kind of have to oblige. And now you could go from one full day of back-to-back 20 meetings to 5 days of conferences because all the other parents couldn't do it in that day. So I have shifted my thought to supporting the half days, but less of them. So that's what I do like in B. I do like the idea of January 12th and May 11th coming off if the district feels that those are not imperative and that we can get our PD done throughout the year on the Tuesday afternoons and the other dates that we have set. I would fully support that. And for 8 years, I've advocated for a February break. That being said, I think unless we're going to do a full week, it's not worth monkeying around to get a couple days here and there. I think we either need to make a concerted effort to make it a week, or not, or leave it as is. I mean, I appreciate the 4 days. I would rather have 7, including the weekends. But that's my philosophy behind that. So it's not the hill I'm going to die on this year. But I really think in B, I would much rather support multiple half days and starting on August 31st or September 1st, however we wind up with it, versus starting a week earlier.
Thank you. Mrs. Flynn?
That was very convincing, Mr. Asa. I've been mulling over the half days a little bit myself back and forth, but I just have a question through the chair to Mr. Testani. Is there any way that you could get some feedback from staff on whether they prefer it if we were to remain with 2 half days on the 20th and the 22nd, or the third? Option B, draft revised. So in October. So through the chair, if we can get some kind of input, if you think it's better to do it in that same week. I think Mr. Asa had said possibly looking. We emailed it too. Yeah, I have to look it after. But I think that someone, I can't remember at this point, had proposed looking at the 13th as well. I don't, it might have been Mr. Asa.
I think the 13th is better than the 22nd.
Okay. So like I said, I think, yeah.
So what I'm hearing is we'll change October 13th to the report card conference. Take away the 22nd. Make January 12th, as I proposed and Mr. Asa just mentioned, a full day of school. May 11th, I keep looking at 2027, as a full day. And then, option B is pretty clean at that point. Veterans Day is off still on B. It's already off. Not on B. Yeah, we're on. Right, it's off. It's not off. It's off, right, we're in school, right.
Ms. Maxon Kennelly.
Thank you. The only thing I would ask is that anything that comes out in our next enclosure, that it be option C, that we maintain A and B, so we don't lose track of these various suggestions. I have a couple of
Well,
different.
do we want to remove A and B altogether?
No.
since- Okay.
No. Speaking for
Is there-
myself,
is
but
there
apparently
w-
there's a chorus.
Is there one that,
I don't think you have a definitive calendar yet. I don't think one's going to come out of this. The one thing I'm going to put out there to board members when we get the next iteration of drafts is that anybody with amendments to the calendar, get them in advance to the secretary to be part of the board packet for consideration. So that, first of all, very important about that is that if you're looking, for example, and Mr. Krasnov quickly, realized the error, but thinking that putting together half days for whole day, which by the way is a mistake I made for a few years, so good that you're catching on really quickly. But this way staff could catch it, and that we're not here at the table doing that, but most importantly, so that all of us can take a look in advance as part of the board packet for the next meeting. Here is what I'm going to suggest as amendments. Please have that in. Again, not only so that we can all read it, but that staff can make sure that we haven't made an error, which is easy to do in keeping track of these days. A couple of other comments. I'm definitely not in favor of 180. I hated going down from 182. But the big reason for that is because, and I think last year, correct me if I'm wrong, we had a cancellation, I think it might have been at Dwight, where we didn't make them make it up. And so if we were at 180, that wouldn't even have been a prerogative, because as I recall, we asked, couldn't this be labeled as an emergency? It was forgiven, and it couldn't be, but we just forgave it because we still hit the 180. So I would always want the superintendent to have some flexibility there in the 181. I mean, 182 does it even better, but I could go with the 181. Separate question. I have, again, through multiple different superintendents, have asked every calendar discussion, do we really need all these half-day or these early dismissal PD days? And every superintendent has said without fail each year, yes, we need them. They are invaluable for the work of the district. And I can't say that they were incorrect, but I just want to get assurance that you can do with your Tuesdays the work that needs to be done. And it could be that, yes, we could for next year, but the following year, we're going to be taking on some major initiative and we're going to need a few more of those half days back. I just want to put that out there, that maybe it's something about next year in particular that we feel pretty good that we can do without them.
I feel pretty good, and I also have a proposal that will be part of negotiations and when we start in July with the teachers as well, that could alleviate the need for these half days as well.
Okay, and that brings me to my another suggestion, which is, because I'm sensitive to the point, I definitely am in favor of just the single day off for the conferences. I want to try it. But I hear Mr. Ace's point as well, and what I would ask through the chair to the superintendent, would it be possible, so for example, this is just looking at option A, where we have the 20th off for those conferences. Could either something like the 13th or the 27th, and then the same thing happen in March, where our staff are contractually staying late for their faculty meetings, that one of those afternoons could be given up ahead of time for the faculty meeting portion, and instead it is simply a conference availability. And that is also where principals would need to work with those staff members who do have a child at another school or at their own school, that they would be able to, we're going to work out your schedule. You might need to have a window of conferences, I'm totally making this up, from 4 to 4:30, but then you would be released at 4:30 to be able to go and have that conference for you with your child's teacher. So the point being, a Tuesday before or after the full day off would be, principals would know we're not doing PD that day. That is for makeup conferences, or to accommodate staff who want to go for the conferences for their child. Does that sound feasible, or you might need to ruminate?
Yeah, I would have to look at that and.
Does it make sense? I just want to know that it makes sense.
I hear what you're saying. It
Okay,
makes
all right.
sense.
So I just want to throw that out there as one way to address some of the concerns that have been raised, which is if that one day is bad, what do you do? Because I also definitely am sensitive to Mr. Ace's point of the staff should not be on the hook then for, well, 5 more days of trying to catch as catch can, make up these conference dates, that there be a day designated as kind of the makeup. And
Yeah, I think the only issue with the one day off is if I'm a working parent, I don't have any option for an evening conference. That's
but that would come with, so what time does elementary school, are they released on their Tuesday?
it would be an hour later, so yeah, 4:45. So if you get out of work at 5, you're not going to be able to make it. That's the only issue. There's no evening option.
Okay.
I don't like this idea, but to say you could, in theory, that the teachers are supposed, if they wanted to, they could leave and come back later and give the time at a later time, right? Or we can't ask them to do that because we only have them for the one extra. I mean, I don't want to put a burden on staff, but it would be one way to alleviate, to solve the problem.
What we would have to do is at a certain, like an early dismissal, we'd have to send them home at
Well, no, I mean, what I'm saying is
1:45 and say, come back for evening conference.
because we only get an hour, right? On Tuesdays?
Yes.
What you're saying makes sense in theory. I just don't think an hour is going to solve the problem based on the timing and what Mr. Testani said. I get it though.
Mr. Krasnov.
One more wrinkle that I just realized with the one full day. As someone that has multiple kids in the schools, it's already really hard for me to try to book all of them in a row when everyone's flooding to sign up. I try to get as many as I can so I don't have to have an hour, 2 hours between, because it just destroys my day. If it's one day, it's going to be really tough on parents that have multiple kids to get slots that line up well. Versus when you have multiple days, I can pick the day that looks like all the slots fit. It makes it easier for people with multiple kids.
Mr. Asa.
You might want to suggest to your building principal,
Yes.
because I know a lot of the schools stagger the signups and they let people with multiple kids in the same school sign up on one day, and then with 3 kids, with 2 kids, and then 1 kid. So it's a solution that's
good to know.
It's a solution that's worked well in
Mimi, if
other
you're
schools.
watching.
All right, we have, again, given you an enormous amount of moving parts to consider. It's also going to make the board's work a little more tricky because we're going to have to basically do it as a one and done in the next meeting if we don't push it again and again. Do you have enough direction to provide an option C?
Yeah, I can come up with many options as you want. I mean, that's not a problem, but the more restrictions with the policy is what's, I mean, that's tough. And I get it. People, there are people that prefer, let's start later, let's start earlier. I go to camp. I mean, with not everyone's going to get what they want, but I think we could use option B and make those changes, as I said, that I heard everyone say, and I think we can come up with a good calendar.
It's always a game of trade-offs. And as you say, not everyone is going to be happy, but.
And I think what will be helpful at some point is, I think having a discussion with the town is maybe looking at alternative polling sites out in the town that do not include the schools could be helpful, like libraries and other buildings.
I think it's a longer term discussion,
Yep.
but worthy of having.
Definitely worthy of having.
All right, Mr. Krasno?
Just one last question. What's the average amount of snow days we've been using? 'Cause it seems like we have been able to get out a little earlier, and I'm just trying to look at the calendar of where we fall, because let's say we only use 2 or 3 snow days, we now are on a Friday again.
It's going to be 8 as soon as you start taking days
Well,
off.
I hear that for sure, but
Well, an option B,
adding days at this point would just put us back where we are. At some point, it puts us back to the 10th. I don't know.
That
it just
data
may
is
make-
available because I asked for it last year, so I think it could be provided.
Yeah, I think it would be good, because
But
if it's,
to reiterate though, the policy 6111 says inclusive of a minimum of 5 snow days. But if we're evaluating the policy, that could also be folded in. But again, there are multiple strictures that we're dancing around.
I'm
in
just
the
trying to
policy.
figure out a way to make as many people happy. It seems like we've been using less and less snow days. Now, I know, of course, we'll change something and all of a sudden we'll have 8, but if we do, worst case scenario, maybe we end up where we would have been in the first place. So I'm just throwing it out there.
I mean, option B gets us out on the 10th, so we have plenty of time. I mean, 2, 3 snow days, 4. Option B does.
You gotta move orientation to Monday unless we're changing the policy. So you gotta bump out to 11. The 5 days puts us at 18. And right now it says 6 days, so we're gonna have to cut that. So you gotta move that orientation, or otherwise we have to change the policy.
I would suggest to everyone sitting here, including in the audience that will be sitting here, that we change the policy. I mean, it's an orientation day. I think to Mrs. Guernsey's point, it's a flexible day, whether it's on the 28th or the 31st.
Guaranteed, we're gonna get emails on that.
We're going to get email. We always get emails. It's one of the largest things that generates emails of anything that we do for the. Okay, briefly, Mrs. Flynn.
I'll just point out too, that will end up being Meet the Teacher Day for elementary schools as well. So we'll get emails about that.
Fair point. All right, and with that, the ball is back in your court, Mr. Giustani.
Okay, do you want an option where the orientation then is on the 31st? We start on September 1st, we get out on the 11th, and okay, then graduation, if there's no snow days, will have to be on Thursday, the 10th. Well, I guarantee there'll be 1 snow day.
Is there a way to make the orientation count as a school day and make it a half day? Yeah, why not? Have everyone come meet their teachers and settle in. The first day of school is kind of like that anyway.
The point is for the transitioning students to get a lay of the land, to get comfortable, to be able to find classrooms without like thousands
And
of
that would be
students.
another day of
and
transportation. We don't do
right.
transportation for
That's
that's
it.
other complications.
Yeah.
All right, okay, we're here. We've discussed many things. I hope the incoming board members appreciate the complexity, and it's like this every year. I'm
Thank
glad.
God Rosh Hashanah is on a weekend, because that would, you guys are really making it tough.
All right. We'll put this down for now. Move on to new business. Discussion of 2026, 2027 FPS budget initiatives and drivers. Mr. Testani.
Well, I'm just gonna say that right now. I'm sorry, mostly because of the drivers. We have still some things that we're ironing out when it comes to some of our things, our unknowns, in terms of special education. We're meeting tomorrow to discuss, to try to nail some of those things down. But salary, benefits, and transportation alone, are getting us in the mid-5 in terms of increase. We also have to buy textbooks. Social studies is going to be a significant investment, since it is K-12. We also have some math textbooks that we need to purchase for 3 of our courses. Not a huge ask, but again, and then we have had the discussion about the excess cost, whether we're going to include that dollar amount. I think it's a great idea. I'm not sure if this is the year to do it. It may be sticker shock to some. And I don't think I'd like to spend the next few months having to explain it to 3 different groups of individuals. Even though it makes sense, it's going to be the money's the money regardless. I just think that it might be a hard pill for some folks to understand that it's this percentage increase, yet the excess cost from the state will go to the town, so you got to deduct that. I think it might be better off this year just including that in next year's conversation. But salary is about 2.6%. Benefits is approximately 1.6% increase to next year's budget. Transportation's 1.1%. The social studies textbooks come in at almost a 0.5 percentage point, maybe slightly less, between 4 and 5%, 0.4 and 0.5%. And then again, tomorrow we're going to really nail down some of the special education costs and some of the assumptions there. So it's going to be a tight budget.
Comments, questions? Mr. Krasnov?
Just to reiterate what Mr. Tassani said, we got a little bit of a preview of what we may be looking at with textbooks. It's going to be a pretty large number. So just hopefully everyone's prepared. It all seems like stuff we're going to need, but it's a large number.
Oh, and not to mention the remaining world language textbooks that were kicked out from last year's budget cycle.
Other questions?
I also want to mention, and we'll talk about it more in facilities next week, but if you all do recall, there was some projects and maintenance projects that the town asked us last year to bundle together. They bonded for, which kind of zeroed out the maintenance ask in some of those projects. So this year it has created somewhat of a cliff where if we do ask for dollar amounts, it's going to look like a significant increase, even though it's the same, but as we normally ask for. So Angelus and I will have that conversation, and we should have it a little bit more refined before we get to the facilities committee meeting.
Other board member comments? Seeing none. Enjoy your January, everybody. Moving on to item, I'm sorry, that was cold. Discussion of charge to delegates to the 2025 CABE Delegate Assembly. Again, this is something that I put on here just in case anyone had any specific language requirements. And to give a little bit of background, we're talking about this at our last meeting. Since then, I had a conversation with Representative Leeper. The education bill that she wanted to see on the special session agenda is not on the special session agenda. She mentioned there might be some hope for it in February, but looking forward, the most probable path is that the current racial balance deadline will stay for the near future. And knowing that this item remains on the CABE agenda, I wanted to see if anyone had any specific recommendations. Frankly, from my standpoint, my preference would be not to create a specific charge, but really just to make sure that we have delegates at the table participating in the discussion. Not necessarily making waves, but saying we are here and this is something that we are impacted by. But I did want to throw it out to the rest of the board and see if there were any specific thoughts about that. Mr. Asa?
Yeah, I would just hope that we're not going to rehash what we did last time, because I think a lot of good information came out of it. And I saw Mrs. Flynn and Mrs. Maxon-Canelli feverishly taking notes. So I am going to put my faith in you guys and use your judgment and read the room and act appropriately.
Wow.
Ms. Flynn?
I'll just respond, Mr. Asa, that after feverishly taking notes, I went home and spent almost 2 hours taking more notes from the tape, just to make sure, I think that our intent is to go up there and represent Fairfield as all the other delegates are and to speak to what I thought was a pretty clear message from this board and do just about that. And kind of get the lay of the land too. I think Mr. Peterson made it very clear that we haven't participated in this process. And for me personally, kind of irregardless, I think it's good for Fairfield to get engaged, especially with racial imbalance there. It doesn't seem to be going anywhere just yet. So I intend to use the words from last meeting and my feverish notes that I added to.
Mr. Krasno.
For lack of a better term, did we reach out to any allies to see if they will attend?
I have not gotten responses from,
Okay, fair enough.
allies. Other districts that may be impacted by this. But in fairness, the deadline is very short for that. Ms. Jacobson.
I won't relitigate, Mr. Issa, what we already talked about last week, except to say I don't know what their task force is actually looking at, given the language. So maybe somebody can just ask, why are we doing a task force instead of the study that had already been proposed in last session, which I've pretty sure will be far more expedient than a task force, knowing how sometimes task forces go. Although I can't always say that. I had some other things. I assume you have notes on those too, the other ones that I was concerned about. And I will just speak to the board. I had started editing to fit in the facility items where I thought they might naturally fit, which there were 3 places. Then I thought about Mrs. Flynn and Mrs. Maxon Kennelly trying to carry amendment after amendment after amendment and trying to squeeze in this word facilities or something like that. And I was like, this is nuts. I'm not going to do it this year, but what I would like to do with the board's blessing is work with whoever would like to with me on drafting a real proposal for next year with the proper preamble and the proper language and the proper things that we really want to advocate for. And I'm happy to work with a couple people on that and then submit it within the timeline that's necessary prior to next year's conference. And with that, I would just say that we could express strong disappointment that there was nothing pertaining to the environments where students and teachers sit, and that Fairfield will forthwith be working on something to bring forward to them for next year, hopefully.
Again, like I said last year or last week, last meeting. Like this is new for us. Everything
Yeah.
about this is new for us.
I was like,
the
they're
schedule,
gonna start making all these amendments and like putting it in writing, and then like why?
but
Like, I was like, let's just do it
I
the right
think
way.
a report back from Mrs. Maxon Kelly and Mrs. Flynn is going to be very valuable and just again having a seat at the
If
table.
you misbehave a little, I won't be mad.
All right. Mrs. Flynn.
Ms. Jacobson, I am happy to carry water for your own
Okay, thank
facilities
you.
any day.
Okay. Thank you very much. Moving on. Superintendent's
fun.
report.
Just a few things. Again, I'm not going to mention again and name the schools of distinction for this year, but I do want to recognize the dedication and hard work of our outstanding educators and staff who go above and beyond every day to create meaningful learning experiences and support the growth and success of all our students. And I also want to recognize all the students and staff that worked extremely hard, may not have made the list this year, but I know are striving for next year. It does not go unnoticed. So I do want to congratulate the schools that did make the list, but also encourage those who did not to keep working hard and working towards that for next year. Just want to remind the entire community, we have 2 teams, but 1 community, and this year's annual Thanksgiving football game is just a couple of weeks away. This year it is at Fairfield Ward High School. Advanced ticket purchase is required, so get yours early if you want to attend the game. It's always a great day for alumni to come back and visit. It's also a great way for the community to come together. This year, we are doing a food drive for Operation Hope's Food Pantry, so please bring a non-perishable item if you do plan on attending the game. If you do not plan on attending the game, you can drop off at one of our schools and contribute to that initiative by both our football teams. I want to congratulate the Fairfield Ludlow High School Model UN students. They attended the Charger Model UN Conference at the University of New Haven. Our Outstanding Delegation Award Our students receive for the second year in a row. This is a top honor of the conference. In addition, several students received individual awards. Best delegate went to Sydney Go, Eleanor Kent, Lauren Kennedy, and Nikisha Desai. And Nashika Desai also earned the Position Paper Award. We're so proud of their hard work, dedication, and representation of Fairfield. On November 20th, there is a support group through Smart Kids with Learning Disabilities, and it'll be at the library. The group will meet to navigate the joys and challenges of raising children with learning differences, including ADHD, dyslexia, processing disorders, or social and emotional difficulties. We sent this out today via Parent Square to families. It's also available on our social media sites. And again, Veterans Day, as was mentioned earlier, and discussion as part of the calendar. I had the privilege of visiting elementary schools and taking part in the special celebrations honoring our vets. There's a deep and meaningful connection here in Fairfield between our students, staff, and the veterans they celebrate. At one school, a very special tribute was made to those who no longer are with us through the white table ceremony at NSS. It is a moving reminder of the sacrifices made by those who served. Very touching moment. I think everyone in attendance will agree, including our students, that it is a very powerful message that is sent every year at NSS. So thank you to that community. I encourage everyone, if you haven't attended one of those, please do so in the future. And that is it for tonight.
Thank you. Ms. Maxon Kelly?
Just one quick point. I actually had forgotten that advanced ticket purchase, it is required so no one can buy at the gate for the Thanksgiving Day game.
Correct.
Would it be possible maybe to go to the first select persons and ask Ms. Vitale if that could be in her newsletter? I'm just trying to think of non-school families. And, you know, I do think we have some older community members who might enjoy going to the game, and that will take them by surprise.
Sure. Absolutely.
Any other comments, questions? All right. Moving on to committee and liaison reports. I put a bullet specifically under here for the review of curriculum committee and ideas for bylaw changes, understanding that this committee has been with us for about a year. Was the brainchild of Mrs. Guernsey, who is leaving us, and I wanted to make sure that there was an option to give her time to talk about her experience with this committee, ideas maybe for changes going forward. Also with the understanding that this is around the time of the year that normally board members propose bylaw changes, and this is a bylaw chartered committee. I'll open the floor to anyone, but wanted to let Ms. Guernsey lead it.
Sure, thank you. I also have a committee report. Would you prefer I wait on that or do that first?
I guess I thought we would go into this first and then do the committee reports after.
So, you know, this has been an interesting experience. I think we're making progress. It feels like we're moving forward in a way that the liaison position did not move forward. We've learned a lot. I think this committee, we've talked about this, and I think probably the biggest takeaway is that the number of meetings that we slated is really not sufficient. As a committee, we decided together that we would want to have a calendar with a meeting scheduled for at least one time per month, and those meetings could be canceled and additional meetings could be added as needed. So that was one change we all felt strongly about. I think we didn't really talk about this, but I think the structure and the size of the team worked really well, having the three of us work on that. So I thought that was effective. I think that the reason that the fewer meetings, even though we added, we had like 7 meetings, they were added like haphazardly, sort of like in response to needs. And it just, like our biggest problem, I mean, the takeaway that I have from this whole experience is around the communication. It was really hard to connect with the staff that were the point person for this. So I think that like having that a better consistency with the meeting might help with that. It's hard for me to put that in a positive way, but I think that being said, also it would be helpful if the superintendent would consider attending some of those meetings. I think having that kind of oversight could be really helpful because of the disconnect between some of the staff members and the committee members. So that would be another recommendation. I think that in terms of the first item of business, we had hoped that, and actually Mr. Krasnoff had suggested this, that we really focus on the curriculum calendar in this last meeting, and we had asked for very specific details about dates where the expectation for documents to come either to the committee and or the board and what those target dates were. But in fact, like even our definition of dates became confusing because like here, the administrators that we're working with were talking about seasons. And so that became this whole conversation about, well, like if it's the season of fall, a date at the end of November, beginning of December causes problems with the budget that a date in September doesn't. So really trying to get a calendar that has dates that might include a month in a year. So these things seem simple, but like we've been working towards this for many, many months. So I think that you know, the first order of business for that committee, if it could be to really truly establish a calendar with dates, knowing that of course they can change, right? So, you know, hey, you know, we need some extra time. We thought we'd have it done in October. Looks like we're running a little bit late on this, like understanding that. But when we just have the calendar be seasons, that's kind of was pretty tricky for us. So, yeah. So the other, let's see. I think also putting together some type of document that speaks to the expectations for the business of the committee. So, for example, I think that it might be an expectation that this committee could have that we would need several days to review a document. And the example I would give would be the latest curriculum that we received on Monday to review for today. It was 899 pages. I will tell you that I read every page of it and I absolutely enjoyed that process. I loved it. I was fortunate that I had the time to do that. I don't think that's a reasonable ask for other members. So like keeping in mind like timelines, right? So not just the calendar, but the expectation that these, you know, board members are volunteers and they need more than like 30 whatever hours to read a document of that size. So, and then I think also just hammering in, so on this list of expectations, like another example would be this idea that this board expects, and just to clarify this, we all know this, but this board expects that before a curriculum announcement were to go out to the public, that we would receive it either at the same time or prior to the public. So those, they're like, I think they're simple and understood by this board, but sometimes it could be confusing for staff. So I think like taking a step back and really starting at the beginning and not making assumptions about what we think that staff know or expect, because I think we're really at square one. So that's sort of where I came off of the year. I think the committee is more important than I even thought it would be. So I thank Mrs. Maxon Kennelly for encouraging this structure. It wasn't successful in the way that I thought it would be, but I think we did make progress and I think we learned a lot. So that's sort of that's my perspective on it.
Well, again, I just reiterate, I think a look back was always anticipated with this. And the board, I think will have some work to do going through it. Does anyone have any, we don't have that whole conversation now, but Krasnoff.
Just to add a little bit to that, I think Ms. Guernsey was really good about the high points. Some of the hurdles we ran into is there really no like planning documents like other committees may have, or there's really nothing to follow. There's no process really to follow. So personally, I think, you know, whoever the chair ends up being and whoever runs the committee may want to get together and set up, you know, better process of how things are going to work. You know, whether the committee basically clears it and then it goes to the board, or how that process is going to work out, whether they look at it first or whether everyone gets it together. And I know it may change on certain things. Something that came up today, there was a very simple, well, at least in a lot of our point of view, is a very simple change. But we were afraid to not send it to the full board because it's not for us to sign off on like a name change of a course or something. So I think it's just laying out some ground rules of what makes sense for the committee to do and what makes sense for the chair to do, and a proper timeline and there's really no process set up for the committee. We kind of were just flying by the seat of our pants to an extent. I think we accomplished a ton. I think you managed it great. So kudos to you. And the feedback we got from the staff was they felt it was valuable. So to me, that makes me feel like the committee's a success and that we should continue to have it. It's just maybe fine tuning it a little bit.
Thank you. Mrs. Rinaldi?
And I think too, ultimately, we did talk about it being a work in progress. It's not even been a year. And also us being allies for the staff as well in the work that they do. So just really underlying that thesis and making that thesis very prevalent as well is an important factor that we really highlighted today and I think needs to be highlighted for the long run.
Great, thank you. And I guess with that, would you like to give your curriculum committee update?
I would really look forward to it. We had a very robust meeting this morning. We met for many hours, had a number of housekeeping items. And we actually had 5 different presentations from different subject areas. And I would just say across the board, the 3 of us, we don't vote on any of these items because we would never want to hold up anything. That's not our purview. But we did feel unanimously on all of these items that they were items that we supported and we hoped that the board would receive them positively. So there was a presentation on an art course name change. I think it's a good one. It modernizes the coursework. We were all really happy with it, and so I hope that will be met with enthusiasm here. If it comes to the board, that was what Mr. Krasnoff was talking about. It's sort of like, well, it's part of the curriculum document, so technically it probably should be approved by the board. It should be something that's quick to do, but then is it possible to do it in a memo and just let us know, so that's something, that's going to have to worked out outside of the committee. I suggested with Dr. Zavajancic that that's something that he would have to work with the superintendent and whoever's the chair to decide how they want to handle it, but we were very enthusiastic about that. There were new textbooks for both a business course and transportation technology. They were, we saw the textbooks. They're really beautiful pieces. Some of them we're using now. You'll receive, hopefully you'll be receiving presentations on them shortly. So, because that'll be part of the new budget cycle. So hopefully that gets to you soon, but they should be hopefully well received. We thought that they were great. We also received a short presentation, and I had asked for this from Dr. Churls, the new director of math, who is getting really rave reviews from the math teachers. So super happy to meet her. And the questions that we had were around the resources that exist now, because we'd been getting some board feedback about how there was this like a need for resources at some levels and trying to better understand that, and knowing that we'd invested like a ton of money years, over the past few years, large sums of money in these resources that either were used or not used, and trying to understand the history and what actually is being used now. So there was a document created about what's being used now. And most importantly, we found out that in fact, they are considering new resources for 3 of the high school math courses. And I think that given the data presentation today and that context, that's sort of an interesting juxtaposition. And, that's something that my concern again is about the timing, right? Because budget is in January. We haven't seen the textbooks there. I think she's going to select it sometime by the end of next week or something. So hopefully that'll get to us soon, but it's a pretty big expense. So, but I think it might be there'll be a whole presentation on it. So that's something to come. It's going to be really important for our math department. And then social studies. So this was wonderful. I was absolutely thrilled to receive it. I think we all were, we didn't get to spend the time with it that we would have liked, but I read through all of it and I was elated, and you will enjoy the work that went into this. I think the quality of this curriculum. The writing is stellar. I think it's the best one I've seen come through in the last 5 years. I think there's a lot of exciting new courses. I don't want to have any spoilers. You can go to yeah, I mean, you can see it's available through our committee, so it's public in that way, but it's very exciting. And we gave a number of we gave quite a bit of feedback to the committee. So what we hope is that I think we can be cheerleaders for their work and ambassadors and support that. I'll be sitting over here supporting, but I think that they just did really a stellar job on putting this together. And we have a lot to look forward. And I hope that presentation will come to us quickly and we can push it out with like some hands held high. So yeah, so we had a lot today. So thank you.
Any questions or comments on her update? Other curriculum, other committee updates, liaison updates? Ms. Maxon-Kennelly?
I'm sure it did not fail to come to the board's attention that there were no policies on here for a first read. I just wanted to explain that's because back-to-back full board meetings, we didn't have policy in between. But just to let you know that right now, tentatively, we are planning to have AI on at our next agenda on Monday, the 17th. And so that is the AI committee that Mr. Taddy is spearheading, got the feedback that was submitted previously. I know Mr. Krasnoff and Mrs. Jacobson both gave us some language ideas. Didn't quite come in the form of amendments, so it was a lot, along with lots of suggestions. So we don't know yet what is coming back to us, except that I know he did not feel comfortable saying yes to that, no to that. He wanted to go to the committee. So we'll see what they bring us on Monday. If it seems to address a lot of the concerns that were raised by the board, hopefully we'll be ready to work on it and vote it out. On the other hand, if it doesn't, I would just have to see the direction of the conversation is all I'm going to say. So I am hoping that that will come out on the 17th. Why, yes, Policy Committee Member Asa.
All right. You got 4 more years, Nick. All right. Other committee liaison updates? Ms. Krasnoff?
Just a real brief CES. Most of the people are still staying on that were there. We did meet a few new members. They are going to host their legislative breakfast, which is one of their I hate to say best events, but it is actually one of their best events. It's really well attended. So whoever the chair is, I highly recommend you go. I already asked Mr. Testani. He seems like he's going to attend. Unfortunately, I will not be able to attend. So I'm going to ask. It's December 12th. It's not open to every board member, though. But I might be able to trade myself out for someone else, we'll say.
Ms. Maxon?
Just one question, having never been to that. Is that the kind of event where it's mostly legislative are reporting to the board members, or there's a lot of give and take, and is there advocacy as part of it?
So, in last year's, and I believe it will be a similar format, Chip, who is the superintendent of CES, moderates it. There's usually some guidance with some questions or direction that either superintendents or other representatives have given him to start the conversation. It then is kind of an open forum on those topics. Legislative people chime in, but the beginning is more a meet and greet, breakfast, sit down, talk to the legislative body about anything you really want to, mingle with other Board of Eds. Overall, it's a little bit of everything.
Our area group meets monthly, and we provide Chip kind of what's on our mind, so to speak, and then that's how he conveys and structures his questions and gets the dialogue started based on the feedback that we provide him.
One more thing to add, he did tell me a few key topics that will be on it. Obviously, special education, which is always a key topic there. Cell phone policies and cell phones will be on it. I believe there'll be a little bit of talk about AI. Those are some of the bigger topics, and then funding with the state. And a lot of people have questions about that. Yep.
Anything else? I'll just say, Board of Finance last week approved our turf field, the vestibules, and the Woods bathroom renovation. And in Finance Committee, we talked about a little bit about transportation. Mike pointed out that there are several routes of where there are 20 kids or less on a bus route that they maybe look to configure and try to look at ways to reduce additional buses. Other than that, that's what I got. Ms. Max, can I?
Sorry, so what are the dates? Because I want to be able to let Parks and Rec know in terms of the ward turf as well as the summer camp impact of the vestibule projects. What's the timing on?
So it goes to RTM. If the RTM approves, we'll be drafting an RFP to go out, and it'll go out to bid, and we'll start all those.
Do we know if it would be on their November agenda, or we don't know that?
Not on their November agenda. We're assuming the December agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? I guess with that, moving to open board comment. Mr. Tracy?
Yeah, thank you again, Mr. Peterson, for your service. I didn't get a chance to say the same to Mrs. Guernsey, so I just wanted to share my appreciation for the time on the board and your partnership and working together on the board. It's been a pleasure, so thank you. And then I just wanted to highlight Mr. Testani's point and Dr. Zavajancic and the crew saying, I was blown away by how many schools came so close to schools of distinction. So that was just awesome. So while it was a certain number, to know so many others were so close is a real accomplishment and a testament to all of our staff and administration. So thank you. And to Mr. Peterson's point about the bonding, I'm psyched that the turf field got moved to the next phase. So this is a huge hurdle, and hopefully the RTM agrees and moves this on. Thank you in advance to Mr. Testani, the entire staff, in advance of budget prep. We're going into the holidays, which is also the busiest time of the year for everything that goes in. And we always say when we go through this gigantic document, how much time and effort goes into it. So thank you in advance to all the staff for preparing that. And one last thing, totally random, but if your school PTA is doing their green team, pumpkin recycling, get your pumpkins to the dumpsters. If you don't have one at your school, reach out to your PTA, see if they can tell you where one is, but it's a good green team initiative. So thank you.
As we say goodbye to two of our members, I just wanted to also take a moment to recognize and welcome our two members that are in the audience, and looking forward to working with them. And I'm glad you could be here, and looking forward to working with you guys. So thank you.
I won't keep everybody, but I want to say it's been a great honor of my life to be on this board. I've met terrific people. I've really just have a great partnership with Superintendent Testani and the staff, and I just having gotten a great education myself in this town and my family in the generations before me. It's been very gratifying to give back even a little bit, and I'm just humbled to have been here, and I will miss it. Mrs. Guernsey.
So grateful for really genuinely every minute of this work, even when it's hard. Honored to represent all of the parents and staff and students as best as I could and advocate for them. So just really, really privileged to be here. Thank you to all of you. Thank you for your kind words. And just wanted to mention I have two exciting things happening personally. I will be serving starting November 18th as Board of Ed representative for Fairfield Ludlow High School. So you may see me. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I felt like I was qualified for that position. So I'm looking forward to that. And then also, yeah, I can't stop. And also I I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say this, but I've been in conversations with members of PTAC about FACE, so I find that to be really exciting. Not sure where that'll go, but lots to look forward to. Thank you all for sending me on this journey. Thank you.
Amazing what you can do when you suddenly have hours and hours every week to reallocate. All right. Public comment. Anyone who hasn't spoken on an agenda item, come up and speak. 3 minutes. Name and address. Hi.
Hi, Jackie Bardenwerper, 35 South Benson Commons. I haven't had a chance yet to thank Mr. Peterson and Ms. Guernsey, but thank you both very much for your service. It's been a pleasure watching you, and can't thank you enough for advocating for our children for so many years. So thank you. You are leaving big shoes to fill. Thank you very much for your service, and enjoy retirement. Not quite, Ms. Guernsey. Guess you're still going to be here, so that's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? And with that, I'm going to make a motion to adjourn. Seconded by Mr. Krasnov. All in favor? Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.